to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show.
Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else.
We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride.
Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse.
It's news, but it's this close to entertainment.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's 6 o'clock on Thursday, the 18th of January. Today, Sunak survives another day. The Prime Minister secures victory over his flagship Rwanda policy that clears the Commons with only 11 Tory MPs rebelling. Our political correspondent Olivia Udley has more.
Yes, Rishi Sunak will be breathing a sigh of relief this morning as that much-heralded rebellion withered to almost nothing. But what's next for that Rwanda bill? Find out more with me very soon.
A right royal scare. The Princess of Wales is doing well after undergoing abdominal surgery, as King Charles also prepares to be treated in hospital next week.
Mother of 2-year-old Bronson Battersby reveals her son was too small to reach a fridge full of food before he starved to death next to his dead father's body.
A Stormont stalemate. The Democratic Unionist Party thwarts the latest attempt to recall Parliament as workers in Northern Ireland prepare to strike over public sector pay.
The Foreign Secretary David Cameron and the Argentinian President agree to disagree over the Falklands following crunch talks in Davos. So we're asking, should Britain return the islands? Sort of know what you're going to say to that one.
Yes, I think we do. And Paul Coit will be here with all your sport.
FA Cup third round replays again last night, and Brits in action at the Australian Open, including Emma Raducanu, who plays very shortly. And this is a good one. There's a fan at Wolverhampton Wanderers game in the FA Cup just a couple of days ago, and he's enjoying the game, and all of a sudden they need a fourth official. It turns out he's a trained referee. I know, I could help out. Comes down and does the rest of the game. Oh. So then when Wolves score, he wants to celebrate, but then obviously he can't because he's an official.
He's got to be professional.
Has to be professional.
Excellent, love it,
Good
Paul.
Story.
Thank you. Alex Burkill's got your weather this morning.
Morning, it's another cold day with lots of snow and ice warnings out, including an amber snow warning for parts of Scotland. I'll have the info shortly.
Good morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Just a quick word this morning, because
Yes.
I was out and about yesterday and bumped into two viewers.
Oh, did
Right.
you?
But do you know what I like about when you come and say hello?
Yeah.
Is that if you work anywhere else, people sort of look at you from a distance or point or maybe just have a brief hello. Any of you lot come forward, you want a full-on chat about what's going on in the world. And that is magic, I think.
That's so nice.
Dawn and Sean.
Dawn and Sean.
Dawn and
Are they
Sean
married?
yesterday. Well, I think so.
It's very nice, yeah. Kind of rhymes.
So very nice to meet them yesterday.
And what were they saying?
They were just chit-chatting about the state of the world and state of the country.
Where did you bump into them?
Toaster.
Is that a cafe?
No, it's a town, darling.
Oh.
The ancient Roman town of Lactadurii.
Oh.
Well,
No,
you go.
you're winding me up.
No, I'm not, no.
Oh, right. Really?
Honestly, she's very uneducated. But it was, it's just, so I love it when you come and say hello. It's really, really nice, and we'd have a proper old chin wag. You'd be desperate to get away from me because I wanted you to wind me up.
Oh, it is lovely, isn't it? I was in a supermarket just before Christmas. I was stopped twice in the chicken aisle and the freezer aisle by two separate people. It was lovely.
Yeah, if I get stopped in a supermarket, it's always in the toilet roll aisle. Don't ask me why.
Don't ask you, that's where you linger on your days off. Clearly.
They said you liked working with me, Dawn and Sean, so you can tell Ellie likes working with you.
Oh, did they, Dawn and Sean?
I said I don't think so.
It's all an act. It's all an act. We actually hate each other.
We do.
But we actually coordinated our outfit especially. So
we do.
That's probably where they get it from. Anyway, it is lovely, isn't it?
It is. So if you ever see us out and about, come and say hello.
Yeah, do.
Now, let's tell you about what's going on today. And it's what the country is talking about, to be honest, at the moment. Rishi Sunak has managed to fend off Tory rebels and get his revised Rwanda bill passed through the Commons.
Well, it aims to stop legal challenges against the minister's plans to send asylum seekers to Rwanda.
Well, dozens of Tories found the bill to be flawed, but only 11 of them, in the end, actually revolted.
Well, last night, one of the people who abstained, Lee Anderson of this parish, told GB News his reasons for the decision.
I wanted to vote no, but when I saw that lot in there laughing, there's no way I could support them above the party that's given me a political home.
Interesting, isn't it? Let's talk to our political correspondent, Olivia Utley, who joins us now. I mean, let's be honest, Olivia. I mean, the PM must be absolutely breathing a sigh of relief this morning.
He definitely will be. It was pretty embarrassing, really, for the Conservative rebels in the end. That rebellion withered away. There were 60 MPs who voted for an amendment to the bill, which would mean that European Court judgments could be completely ignored. But then when it actually came to voting for the bill at the third reading, almost all of those MPs decided to vote with the government and not with Labour. Only 11 held out, the sort of hardcore rebels, Miriam Cates, Danny Kruger, Simon Clarke and a few others. Of course, today Rishi Sunak will be breathing a sigh of relief, but this is not the end of the road for the problems with the Rwanda scheme. Now the Rwanda bill will go to the House of Lords, and although the Conservatives have 270 Lords, they do not have an overall majority there. And in fact, quite a lot of the Conservative peers are more on the left of the Conservative Party than in the House of Commons. So there's likely to be quite a lot of difficulty when the bill actually gets to the Lords. Now, what experts think is going to happen then is the Lords are unlikely to just simply vote down the legislation because traditionally the Commons has more sort of authority and gravitas than the Lords. The Lords is there to scrutinise legislation that the government come up with. But what they can do is amend the legislation and send it back to the House of Commons. The House of Commons would then probably vote any amendments down. As we saw last night, the Prime Minister is not willing to accept amendments. But then the bill would go back to the House of Lords. This is a process known as parliamentary ping-pong. And though in the end the government does have the right and the ability to overrule any Lords amendments, it'll all take quite a long time. And time is what Rishi Sunak does not have. He wants migrants to be taking off for Rwanda by the spring. But if we have sort of 2 months of parliamentary ping-pong with the Lords trying to get the bill changed, the Commons voting it down, sometimes more Tory MPs voting with the Lords, etc., then it's very, very unlikely that we're actually going to see anything moving anytime in the next few months. And to make matters more difficult for Rishi Sunak, there's complications on the Rwanda side as well. The Rwandan government has signed a treaty which is there to essentially make Rwanda, the Rwandan asylum process, a safer process. But it has to ratify that treaty into law. And that process is going to take a couple of months as well. So, yeah, it's a sigh of relief for Rishi Sunak this morning. But it feels a little bit like a Pyrrhic victory because further down the line, there are going to be a lot of hurdles. And that idea of planes taking off to Rwanda, something which Suella Braverman, when she was Home Secretary, said she dreamed about, is still a very long way off.
And Olivia, what do you think this whole debacle this week has done for confidence in the Tory party? Because there's been a lot of noise, hasn't there?
Well, yeah, and I think that's a really, really interesting question. Basically, what seems to have happened is that the public confidence in the Conservative Party is fraying even more than it was already. That whole spectacle last night ultimately was really quite embarrassing for the Conservative Party. All they did, really, those rebels, that whole debate, drew attention to the divisions within the Conservative Party. We haven't seen any polling on it yet, but I was going down the comments of the Telegraph comment section. Remember, the Telegraph is known as the Tory graph. Conservative members, loyal Conservative voters read the Telegraph. I don't think I've ever seen such anger with the government in the Conservative comment section. People find it sort of embarrassing. They find it sort of difficult to watch. And if all the Conservatives did last night was essentially throw a real spotlight on the divisions within their party, then I think what we can expect when the next polling about voting intentions come out is that share of the Conservative vote to dip even lower.
Olivia, for now, thanks very much indeed.
Now, the Princess of Wales is reportedly doing well after undergoing successful abdominal surgery. She's expected to remain in hospital for up to 14 days before continuing her recovery at home.
Well, this comes as King Charles prepares to be treated for an enlarged prostate next week. Buckingham Palace says the condition is benign.
Well, let's speak now to royal correspondent and writer Michael Cole, who joins us for more on this. Good morning to you, Michael. And we had two significant news updates, didn't we, in very quick succession yesterday. It's quite worrying news for both of them, isn't it?
Absolutely. Good morning, Isabel. Good morning, Stephen. I was with you yesterday at 2 o'clock, about to go on air to discuss a completely different subject, when the story broke that Her Royal Highness the Princess of Wales was in hospital and had undergone what must have been quite extensive surgery, because, make no mistake, this is not a minor matter. The only good thing you can say is that it wasn't emergent. It wasn't an emergency. It was a planned procedure, and she went in, and that it had been successful. And then within an hour, we heard about the King going in at some future moment for prostate enlargement procedure to presumably tighten that and make sure that he's fit for his job and his responsibilities. I think we can start this morning by wishing them both well, but particularly the Princess after her second night in hospital at the London clinic at the top end of Harley Street there. And I'm quite sure that later in the day, her husband, Prince William, will be there to visit her. He was with her at the time of the operation, and he has made it quite clear that he's going to cancel a lot of his program in order to be there for, not just for her children, because, of course, she's a well-known public personality. We know her, but she's also a mother, a wife, a daughter, and a sister. And I'm sure our hearts go out to her because, quite clearly, this is not something trivial. It is something quite serious. What it is, I think we will be told in due course. And in the meantime, I would prefer not to speculate because she's
look, I think that's a fair point. And look, we'd need to know that we'd expect a statement because she's going to be in hospital for a couple of weeks. So that's something significant. I'm rather surprised that we've heard about the King's condition because he's not in hospital yet. And if he, when he does go in, it's a standard procedure. Why are we getting so much information on this?
Perhaps, Stephen, it's a very good point you're making, but perhaps they've learned a little bit from the politicians, getting all the bad news out on the same day, if you will, so we don't have a double whammy, it comes out together. And I tell you what I do think. I think that Kensington Palace did extremely well yesterday because it put out a more candid bulletin than I would have thought. It went into greater detail. It didn't tell us everything. We're not entitled to know everything, but we are entitled to know because we are all loyal subjects, and this is an important development. And I think the fact that they did do that shows that they've learned a lot of lessons. And I think also the Buckingham Palace is to be commended by making it clear from the outset that the condition that the King is undergoing is benign. In other words, is not cancerous, because were it cancerous, the prostate gland would have to be removed. And also, we know that from a briefing that cancer is not involved with whatever is ailing at the moment the Princess of Wales. So I think they have learned some lessons over the years. You don't want rumour, you don't want speculation, you don't want scare stories, and I think they've been as candid as they can be, and for that, they're to be commended.
Michael Cole, thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, we wish them well.
Yeah, we
do wish them well.
It did strike me, actually, with both of those updates yesterday, very quick success, only 45 minutes between both of those statements, was, as you said, how open it was and how much information we were given. If you think back to the late Queen, never would have revealed why she was in hospital.
I think it's a bit much.
Do you?
If I'm honest. For the King, I do. I mean, that's quite a personal thing, isn't it? As you said, he's got to have a procedure or something, but I'd leave it at that.
Then the rumour mill starts, doesn't it? And people assume it's a lot worse than it is.
I suppose, but poor fella.
I know.
I want everyone to know that that's going on.
Yeah. But apparently he wanted to make that point because he wants to raise awareness, which is quite nice, isn't it?
That, if that has been the case, then that's really quite something.
That's what I was reading this morning.
Because it is a very personal thing to have released that you've got a prostate issue. So if he's wanting to raise awareness, good on you, sir, for that.
Yeah.
To be perfectly honest.
Should be applauded for that, really. But let us know what you think. Do you like this new open approach from the royal family, or do you think it's better left, as Stephen might say, as a private matter? Do let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.com.
I wouldn't tell you if it was me.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Neither would I.
It's 15 minutes. You haven't got any.
Well, I don't, but if I did. I wouldn't be telling you.
15 minutes past 6. Let's have a look at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom this morning.
The US government have carried out a fourth round of strikes on Houthi targets in Yemen. This comes after the rebel group launched a drone that hit a US-owned ship in the Gulf of Aden. Back in November, the Houthis began attacking such vessels in response to Israel's military operation in Gaza.
A Fujitsu software developer has revealed the faulty Horizon IT system was too expensive to fix. He appeared in front of the Post Office inquiry. The defective system led to more than 700 sub-postmasters being wrongly convicted of fraud. Fujitsu has apologised to everyone involved.
Train station ticket machines are charging people twice as much compared with those using online retailers. Research conducted by Which says that these fares online were cheaper around 75% of the time. Back in November, plans to close rail ticket offices were abandoned after a massive public uproar.
Can there be different prices for the...
It's bad, isn't it?
I mean, you just assume, you know, a train from Leeds to London cost, at a certain time, would cost so much, whether you buy it online or a ticket machine or whatever. It should just cost what it costs, shouldn't it?
Isn't that the way of the world, though? It's often cheaper online now.
Oh, yeah.
I actually rarely, if I'm spending, let's say I'm buying a coat or something, I rarely buy it in the shop now because you can often do better online. Even though you did well the other day, didn't you?
I did very well the other day with a new coat. Because
Hot bargain.
There was a sale on.
Yes.
I do like a sale.
And I like a bargain.
Yes.
Yes, you did very well.
Thank you. Now, the political turmoil in Northern Ireland continues as the deadline for restoring a power-sharing government approaches.
Well, it's been unable to function since the May 2022 elections because of the DUP's refusal to nominate a speaker in protest over the Northern Ireland Protocol.
Well, in the meantime, more than 100,000 public sector workers from 16 trade unions, including teachers, nurses and bus drivers, will walk out today in an ongoing dispute over pay.
Well, it's going to be the biggest strike in Northern Ireland in 50 years.
Let's talk to political commentator Dr. John Coulter. John, good morning. Look, in terms of power sharing, what are we likely to see? Is there going to be any movement from the DUP on this?
Well, good morning, folks, from a very frosty Northern Ireland, where because of the snow, the political landscape is equally snowed under. I think, no, there's not going to be any movement from the Democratic Unionists. They are a party that is known to put party first before province. So from that point of view, they will be interested in getting the best deal they can for themselves before they make any move whatsoever. But I think that one thing that they have to remember, in fact, one thing all politicians and parties will have to remember, is that history will not look kindly on them if anyone is responsible for flushing devolution down the political toilet. We are in a very serious crisis situation, and the Secretary of State has really only got two main options that he can do. He can kick the process down the road by bringing in emergency legislation to effectively keep the status quo, or he could call a snap assembly election in which the DUP hope they might overturn Sinn Féin's seat majority, and that would allow the DUP to march back into Stormont. I don't think we're looking at the present minute at a snap election. I think what we're possibly going to look at is Heaton Harris, Secretary of State, looking at the extent of today's strike. How will it be supported? As you said yourself, this is going to be one of the biggest strikes in Northern Ireland history. I'd go a step further. It's probably the biggest strike since the 1926 general strike right across the United Kingdom. I think what he'll bring in is what we might call a hybrid direct rule. In other words, he'll give more powers to permanent secretaries and senior civil servants. And if there are very, very difficult decisions, he will make them himself. What we could see
forgive me, John, forgive me, but for the people of Northern Ireland, isn't that just going to seem like a fudge?
Yes, without any question of a doubt. What we're looking at here is how do we get out of the fudge? We can moan and complain that there's no Stormont. There is a cost of living crisis at the present minute. How do we get the money, the £3.3 billion that Heaton Harris has set aside to pay workers? That's what is needed to get that back into the pockets. One of the big dangers that we also face is that if we compare it to the English Premiership, Northern Ireland is going to be relegated down the political league table. We've just heard about Rwanda. We've got Yemen. We've got Gaza. We've got Ukraine. You've got the Tories fighting amongst themselves. And we've got the electoral threat to them from Reform UK. There's a lot on the Prime Minister's plate. So basically, Northern Ireland is in danger of being relegated to the lower political leagues.
OK, Dr. John Coulter, very good to see you this morning. Thank you very much indeed. Now, as John was saying, it's very frosty out there today. Alex Burkle has all your details.
Good morning, Alex Burkle here with your latest GB News weather forecast. It's going to be a cold day again with a harsh frost for many of us this morning, but watch out for some hefty snow showers, particularly across northern parts. For northern Scotland, we have an amber snow warning in force because following on from some heavy snow showers already this week, we could see a further 15 to 20 centimetres of snow building up in some places. Some disruption is quite likely. Also some wintry showers affecting parts of Northern Ireland and down western and eastern coastal parts of England and Wales too. Further inland though, lots of dry and sunny weather, but still feeling cold. Temperatures only rising a few degrees above freezing for many, and some parts of Scotland staying below freezing. Through this evening and overnight, we will see more showers for a time, continuing to feed down on a brisk northerly wind before some more outbreaks of more persistent snow push their way in across parts of Scotland through the early hours. Further south, it's a generally dry picture with lots of clear skies, so again, temperatures are going to drop. Many places falling several degrees below freezing, so a frosty or possibly even icy start for some of us tomorrow morning. On Friday, a bit of a north-south split across northern parts, particularly Scotland. A lot of wintry weather, outbreaks of snow continuing for a time could cause some further disruption here, but a generally dry and again sunny theme further south. Yes, it is going to feel cold, though temperatures may be up a degree or so compared to today, and in the south, generally light winds here, but turning milder as we go towards this weekend with the potentially stormy weather too.
Oh, stormy weather too. Lovely.
Great,
It was
yeah.
-6 where I lived this morning. It was not fun.
Did you have to de-ice your car?
No, well, I started it before I could start it on my phone.
Well, that's
So
very
it was hot when I got back to drive down very slowly.
Did you?
In four-wheel drive mode.
Oh.
The ice, you've got to be so careful, haven't you?
You're lucky you've got all the technical gadgets to do this.
Got it, when you drive a long way every day. Anyway, still to come for you, it's a big day for British film because the BAFTA nominations are due to be released later this morning. But who's tipped to win? Stephanie Tetcher will tell you in just a moment.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's
sure your mic was up for that.
Past 6. Now, the BAFTA nominations for 2024 are set to be announced in London later today, 12 noon. Yes, is that correct? Yes,
that's correct.
Oppenheimer and Barbie are among some of the films expected to win big.
Yes, tell us more about it. Is our fabulous showbiz reporter, Stephanie Tetchy. Good morning.
Good morning, Stephen and Ellie.
So who's tipped for this then? Because, I mean, the Barbie Oppenheimer, Barbenheimer and all that sort of thing, I mean, they were released at the same time, pretty much.
It was the biggest marketing ploy that we've seen with two films before, because you were either Team Barbie or Team Oppenheimer, two complete opposite films, but they managed to get bums on seats in the cinemas. So, as you can imagine, it was just beautiful, especially after the pandemic. So can you imagine, as with award season, they've been doing pretty well. We've had the Golden Globes where we've seen Oppenheimer do really well. Barbie, not so well, but it picks up, tends to do well in Best Comedy. But so far with the BAFTA long list, we've seen them being nominated in over 12 categories. So for me, it feels like it's going to be a three-legged race between Oppenheimer, Barbie and Killers of the Flower Moon, which was, of course, directed by Martin Scorsese.
I've not heard of it.
Killers of the Flower Moon.
No, am I so out the loop?
Yeah, I think it's because it's quite intense viewing. 3 hours. It's about a drama, crime drama, starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Lily Gladstone, who's done pretty well. But the thing with award shows, Ellie and Stephen, it's like most viewers at home are not aware of the films unless you're a really big film buff. So the good thing about award shows, it puts films on different people's radar.
Oh, right. So they get they get the nominations, and then more people go and see them.
Yeah, and the good thing about the BAFTAs, it's about the British people's take on what has been really hot. And it's just before the Oscars, so whatever tends to do well at the BAFTAs will tend to do well at the Oscars as well.
So are we expecting anything for The Crown?
No, because this is all about film.
It's all about film.
Emmys...
I've got The Crown here.
She doesn't listen. She doesn't listen.
I've got The Crown here, written in black and white. Right, I'll ask you about Barry Keoghan then, because Barry Keoghan...
He's done amazing.
He's
such a rising star, and the way he's catapulted into the limelight has been amazing. And he was in Saltburn, which was directed by Emerald Fennell, and it's been amazing to see him. He's done pretty well.
But I tell you what, there's been a bit of controversy around him. I saw a few headlines a few days ago saying he's getting into a bit of bother.
Is he? Well, I think it's, you know what, the pressure is once you do come into the limelight, obviously you start getting that famous lifestyle, and apparently he split up with the mother of his child, but that doesn't take away from his acting abilities, and I do think he will do pretty well at the BAFTAs.
What about any wild cards?
Wild cards now, I think The Holdovers, that stars Paul Giamatti, and I saw it the other day at the BFI South Bank, and he plays a teacher who gets holed up with students on campus during Christmas. It has been released post-Christmas, but when I watched it the other day, it's done amazing. And the actress in it, Davine Joy Randolph, she's done amazing so far at the Golden Globes, and I think she's going to do really well at the BAFTAs, and she might get Best Supporting Actress.
And of course, fashion.
Oh.
All eyes are going to be on that red carpet.
It is. Well, you know, last year, Ellie, we didn't hardly have any red carpet suited actors strikes. So now that we're back and we're seeing an awards show, everyone is calling their stylists and trying to get the best gowns that will make a statement. Obviously, we've had a lot of politics, both in the industry and out of the industry. So on the red carpet is when we tend to see people making such statements through their fashion choices.
Very nice. Stephanie, good to see you.
Thank you, guys.
As always. I've got some great news for you this morning. Which is warming my heart.
Yeah.
Ellie's mic's broken.
Do you need me to stand in?
Well, you can stand in, but I can just have the show to myself.
Or I can share your mic here.
Let's have a close-up on camera 6 of me. No. Anyway, it's 6:30. This is Breakfast with Stephen. A reminder of our top stories this morning. And Sunak survives another day. The Prime Minister secures victory over his flagship Rwanda policy that clears the Commons with only 11 Tory MPs rebelling. The Princess of Wales is doing well after undergoing abdominal surgery. King Charles is also preparing to be treated in hospital next week. A mother of two-year-old Bronson Battersby has revealed her son was too small to reach a fridge full of food before he was found starved to death next to his father's body. The Democratic Unionist Party is thwarting the latest attempts to recall Parliament in Northern Ireland as workers there prepare to strike over public sector pay. And the Foreign Secretary David Cameron and the Argentinian President Javier Milei have agreed to disagree over the Falklands following talks in Davos. So we're asking, should Britain return the islands? Let's have a look at all... Oh, you've got it on the... This is perfect. Get out. It's my shot. Time for all the latest sports news now. Paul Coyte is here. Good morning.
I'm really looking forward to this because I know Ellie is going to ask me questions via the form of dance or semaphore.
Yes.
I'm not sure which one we're going to have.
Interpretive dance.
OK, that would be very lovely.
Yeah.
What do you say, Ellie? Everton? Is that what you're saying to me? I recognise.
Apparently it's back. Can you hear me now?
Oh, that's good.
There you go. I'm back in the room.
Should we do a little FA Cup replay? Just a few of those. I'll quickly go through those. Everton, it's like the Alamo for Everton at the moment. Pretty much everything's going against them. They're having to fight back off the pitch because of these deductions in points, and now it looks like there's another one coming. Then they had to face Crystal Palace yesterday in the FA Cup and came through 1-0, so they are through to the fourth round. They'll be at home to Luton. Nearly a bit of giant killing, which we like in the FA Cup. Nottingham Forest were 2-0 up against Blackpool. Blackpool came back to 2-2. Then it went to extra time, and then, as often happens, the bigger team manages to win in extra time. Chris Wood scored the winner there. So they will play Bristol City in the next round. So after Bristol City beat West Ham on Tuesday, Bristol Rovers, it was their turn, because we could have had a pair of Bristols in the fifth round, couldn't we? So Bristol City, they'd already won. Bristol Rovers were 1-0 up, but then Norwich, who they were playing, scored 3. So Bristol's only just won in the fourth round.
So bad.
And face a trip to Liverpool, which is not going to be easy for Norwich. So good luck with that.
I'm so confused now.
Are you really?
I am.
Did I throw you with that one?
You did throw me with that one. Let's have a look at...
Tennis?
What's going on? Yeah, tennis. What's going on with Djokovic?
He's in another row, isn't he?
He is. See, the thing is, the Australian Open, they often do this, and you get a lot of hecklers that will, I'll think you're rubbish, mate, and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. I don't know how bad it got, because I want to know exactly what they said. But Novak was having none of it, and I think we have the clip. This is from yesterday when he was playing, how he reacted to it. There you go.
Oh,
come on. Yeah? You think you're hard enough? Come on. Yeah, you want to try me out? What do you say? So there we are, the umpire. Yeah, OK, you think you're big man, huh? So that's...
Yeah, but it's riled him, though. It's riled him.
That's exactly it, because he said after the game wasn't going so well. Yes, it was. And he then got a little upset, and it riled him, and that's the sort of thing that drives him. So although the guy actually... I mean, can you believe that? If you're going to heckle, you've got to follow through with a heckle. And he apologised, sorry, mate, and then Novak carried on.
And it's Novak Djokovic. He'd get feisty with you.
I know, but...
If you dished it out.
What would have happened if he'd said... Because actually what he said was,
come on.
Come and say it to my face.
Yeah.
So if someone had actually come round and then said... Then what would have happened?
A throwing tennis racket,
Do you
I
think
bet.
so?
Yeah. Can you tell us this lovely story, please, about this
I need to say
fan?
Emma Raducanu plays today.
Oh, does she?
Jack Draper is playing at the moment. Cameron Norrie is through to the next round.
Oh,
so that's all happened in the last...
And how's Emma Raducanu looking? So we're a bit worried about her, weren't we?
She's
the
okay.
Injuries.
Well, she said she's fine. So the thing is, she's going to be playing Wang Yifan of China. So that's the game, and probably gets underway. We're looking in about half an hour's time. So keep you updated with that. And if she wins, and Katie Boulter wins, who's the British #1, they will play each other in the third round.
Oh, we don't want that.
No, we don't want that.
I know, but it could be very interesting.
Yeah.
Sorry, you asking about the Wolves
fan.
Yeah, I really like this story. And this is Ross Bennett. Now, Ross Bennett is Wolves fan, and he's a referee for under-12, so he does kids' football. And during the game, the assistant referee, which we used to call the linesman, was ill after the 90th minute. So the fourth official, this is the guy that holds up, you know, how many minutes left, and he's got the earpiece. He then took over, so they needed another fourth official. So this is almost like the plane, can anybody fly a plane?
Yeah, isn't it?
And it was. So literally, he's gone down and said, well, you know, I've done some badges, I could do this. And they said, great. So away you go. But the thing is, if you're the fourth official, this is probably the worst one because that's the one that the managers will always shout in the ear of, always have a go. So anyway, he did very good. They had to face a potential red card where he's got the managers having a go at him. He's holding up the substitutes board. Yeah. And everything went well, apart from his team, Wolves, scored the winner towards the end, and that was the most difficult thing for him because Ross wanted to give it all this, but then he had to keep it.
He couldn't celebrate.
But isn't that great?
Good on him, though.
Jimmy Hill did that back in the early 70s.
Did he?
Yeah, for Arsenal, when he was actually there for Match of the Day, and they needed a linesman, and he was the only person, so they put him in a tracksuit and a pair of trainers that were about 3 times too small. 3 sizes too small, and he did the line.
Oh, that's
so it does happen from time to time.
Would you do it for Spurs?
Are you qualified?
No, I would probably... there's a chance that I may be called up to play left-back for Spurs.
That
there was
would
a
be
chance,
very good.
Is anybody... I'd give it a go. I'd be terrible, but I'd give everything.
A dream come true.
It would be.
Yeah.
Maybe too late?
I think possibly.
Never.
You think so?
Ever.
Ellie says no.
Never.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Paul, we'll see you later on.
Thank you very much. Now, stay with us. Another post office scandal fiasco. We're going to be talking about that in the paper review, which is next.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, welcome back. Let's have a look at what's making the news this morning. And joining us to go through the front pages and everything in between is doctor and medical writer Dr Renee Honderkamp and former Lib Dem and Home Office Minister Norman Baker. Very good to see you both this morning.
Before we have a chat, shall we look at the front pages? And the Eye have revealed in an exclusive that more sub-postmasters have been convicted because of another software malfunction.
The Daily Express leads with Kate Middleton doing well after her abdominal surgery.
The Princess isn't the only royal whose health has made the headlines. The Mail reports the King will undergo prostate surgery next week.
The Times leads with more on the Rwanda bill, with polls showing the lowest level of support for the Tories since Liz Truss.
The Financial Times reports that global stocks and bonds have retreated as investors scale back expectations of interest rate cuts in the UK. Sounds very sort of technical, doesn't it? Retreating.
Yeah, it does a little bit.
They've gone down a bit.
Well, Dr Renee Hondekamp and former Lib Dem and Home Office Minister Norman Baker are with us this morning. And Renee, let's start with you, shall we? And this news of the King, of course, going in for surgery next week. We had quite significant news, really, didn't we, in quick succession yesterday.
It's a flurry.
It was a flurry. The Times saying that he's not going to need a stand-in, though, so that's good news.
It's good news. I mean, it's a very simple operation that he's going to have done. It's something that men, as they get older, suffer with quite commonly. It's something in GP land that we see all of the time. Quite often, a large prostate, which does cause symptoms when you want to go to the loo, getting up at night to go to the loo, things like that, is managed medically. But if it gets out of hand, and I would imagine with someone as busy as the King, where he's not needing to run off to the loo every 3 minutes, surgery is probably the best option. But he'll recover quite quickly, I would imagine.
They sort of burn some of it off around the urethra.
They just make it smaller, yeah. So they go in with a camera and just laser some of it away.
Right.
And what about...
That's a nice thought, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. It's never going to happen to me.
No.
What do you think about his openness with this? Because it's reported in some of the papers today that he's decided to be open about why he's going in for surgery, because he'd like to raise awareness.
Well, I mean, that's a valuable thing to do if that's his intention. I have to say that while I'm in favour of proper scrutiny of the royal family, particularly on finance, I do think these matters are essentially private matters, and we don't really have the right to know what people's individual health situation is. So I'm a bit surprised that they've been as open as this.
Yeah, but I think it's great, actually, because I think it is something that many men, I think 70% of men, actually, by the time they get to the age of 70, will have some symptoms or other. It's something that's very common to men, but probably something they don't talk about very often.
No, well, you wouldn't.
Well, it's a bit like what we've done for women and menopause, that women now feel more able to come forward and talk about those symptoms. So I think if this enables men to come forward to their GP and say, look, I've got these symptoms, is there something we can do to help me? Then I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, well, yes. Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. Back in the day, of course, it was all, you know, someone's got problems with their waterworks. Yeah. What I used to just say. I remember my grandma saying that Mrs. Smith's husband's got a problem with his water. It's probably just a prostate issue.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that common.
Yeah.
And what do you make of Catherine? So she is going to spend up to 2 weeks in hospital. She won't be back to royal duties till after Easter. So we know that it's abdominal surgery. Do we have any idea of what that might be?
No, and I think I agree with Norman, actually. I think speculating on someone's, you know, abdominal surgery, I think is something that we don't really want to get into, or we shouldn't.
Suitably vague.
I think it's suitably vague. I mean, she's a woman. You can assume it's probably some sort of female problem, but you never know. It might be something else. And to speculate is, I think, awful in that I said to Norman, if it were me, and even if I was a member of the royal family and it was splashed all over the front pages, it would feel a little bit intrusive. So I think we can just wish her well. She's got her family by her side and for a speedy recovery.
Yes, well, I think we'd all agree on that one. Norman, to the Metro.
Yes, the Metro.
The Rwanda plan has got another sort of obstacle if it doesn't happen.
Well, an obstacle, I don't know an obstacle, but the Rwandan president has very generously, I think, said that he'll refund Britain the money if no migrants are actually sent over there. And, of course, none have been sent so far. In fact, we've been receiving migrants from Rwanda because 6 people have been accepted as having genuine refugee status, which, by the way, suggests that Rwanda is not a safe country, because that's a conclusion from the Home Office, whereas none have been sent to Rwanda. So he's been quite generous in his offer. And, of course, since then, we've had politicians like Yvette Cooper saying, if the money is coming back, then we'll use it for other purposes.
Oh, right. Oh, well, it's not quite the brief I've got.
No, the brief is not right, actually. Yeah.
No, there you go. That's the exact opposite, isn't it? But there you go. Would this change your thoughts on it all, Renee?
It's not going to change my thoughts on it. I think if this plan is going to fail, which I think it inevitably is going to fail, it's not going to get through the House, is it, in its current form, that's for sure, the upper house.
Well, yeah, but they could use the Parliament Act, couldn't they?
They could do, but, I mean, look, I mean, the only people to accept ourselves from the European Convention on Human Rights, who are the other countries who do that? There's only 2, Russia and Belarus. I mean, do we really want to be labelled, bracketed with these countries like that?
No, we should just leave it. We should just leave it.
That's what they'll effectively do. They're not adhering to it in Russia and Belarus. I just think we've got to be very careful about international image that Britain has from these sorts of actions. I don't think anything... the other thing is, The Rwandans will take 200 people. That's forget the expression, it's not an appropriate expression, it's a drop in the ocean.
Yeah, but it's meant to be, the whole point of it is not about shipping loads of people there, it's about it being a deterrent.
I don't think it will be a deterrent, because...
Don't you? Cross in a small boat and you'll end up in Rwanda?
Well, I mean, the deterrent, if I were a refugee, would be the fact that you might well sink and lose your life crossing the channel. I mean, if that's not a deterrent, then this won't be a deterrent.
I don't know. I think it will be a deterrent, but I think if it's doomed to fail, then if Rwanda are going to give us our money back, then I think we should welcome that and use it for other things, like maybe take our veterans that are sleeping on the streets off of the streets and put them in hotels.
But then how do we fix the migration issue? Because that's not going anywhere. I mean, even yesterday, in this freezing cold conditions, we're seeing small boats crossing the channel.
Well, maybe we should start tipping boats back, taking boats back. I mean, if these boats actually start to fail and they're literally on the coast of France, we still go out and rescue them and bring them back to the UK. We need to start turning back boats in the channel. And I actually think maybe we should make it less hospitable here. You know, people are coming here for a reason. They're coming here because we actually treat our migrants very, very well. We can continue to do that. We should house them, feed them, but we don't need to give them pocket money. We don't need to let them be free at large to do whatever they want in the country, which is what people are scared of, until we process them.
No. The majority of people who apply for refugee status, however they get here, and by the way, in law, how you arrive in a country is not relevant to whether you're a genuine refugee or not. The majority of people who arrive here seeking refugee status are deemed by the Home Office to be genuine cases. That's the statistics.
But that's the problem with our Home Office. That's not about the people that are arriving here, because if they arrive in Germany or France, it's less than 20%, but we decide that over 75%.
It's 30% in France.
OK, so we suddenly decide that France are wrong, and we'd say that these people are genuine asylum seekers. I would suggest that that's more a problem with our approval system than it is with who's coming.
The Home Office is pretty dysfunctional, and it always has been. It was dysfunctional when I was there. I might say I wasn't the immigration minister, thank goodness, but it was dysfunctional when I was there. So, is France being overzealous? Are we being too generous? I don't know. The truth is somewhere in the middle. But there are large numbers of people who arrive in this country who are accepted as genuine refugees, and people would... Well, if you examine the cases, agree with that. You know, one of the ways we deal with this issue, I think, is what's happened with the government doing this deal with Albania, because there are a huge number of Albanians who came across. The government's reached a bilateral agreement which has cut the numbers from Albania by 95%. That's the kind of thing we should be doing.
OK. Look, just stay here, you two, because on this very issue, let's talk to Home Office Minister Chris Philp, who joins us now. Norman Baker, good morning to you. Norman Baker here was just saying that the Home Office is dysfunctional and always has been. You've got to be looking at that when it comes to any sort of immigration issue, haven't you?
Sorry, I didn't catch you there. Can you just repeat the Home Office is what?
Dysfunctional.
No, I don't think that's the case. As somebody just said, the arrivals from Albania are down by 93% year on year. Small boat crossings are 36% down last year compared to the previous year. We removed 24,000 people who were in this country illegally. Those are all successes. And in my area, which is police and crime, crime is down 10% year on year. And we've got record police numbers. So I think those are things we can all be pleased about.
Yeah, but we have got this, as Norman Baker was just saying here, you have got this issue where however people get into this country, the vast majority of them are deemed to be able to have refugee status. So what is going on in the Home Office there?
Well, that obviously depends on the nationality. It varies a lot by nationality, and actually the proportion getting granted asylum has actually been going down over the last couple of years. We've also set up this inadmissibility policy where if somebody comes from a manifestly safe country, so particularly that refers to people coming by small boat from France, because France is obviously safe, their asylum claims are deemed inadmissible, they're not even considered, and we will then seek to return them either to their home country if that's safe, or to a safe third country, particularly, obviously, Rwanda. So those asylum claims aren't even looked at, and that's the right thing to do. And that's also lawful under the Refugee Convention, because the Refugee Convention allows you to penalise people for illegal entry, and coming by small boat is illegal if the person is not coming, and the phrase is directly from a place of danger. And obviously, hanging out in France or Germany, that's not a place of danger. They're not coming directly from a place of danger when they get on a small boat. France is safe.
Those 60 or so Tory rebels have made an awful lot of noise this week. It's very embarrassing for the Tory party, isn't it? This whole debacle, if anything, those rebels, although it has kind of melted away now, it's only really drawn attention to the divisions that are clearly within the Conservative Party. And there's a YouGov survey in the Times today saying that support for the Conservatives has fallen to just 20%. That is a level not seen since October 2022 under Liz Truss. How do you think this whole debacle has affected the Tory party, and what has it done for confidence in the party?
Well, I mean, first of all, on the third reading vote last night, there were only 11 colleagues who, by the way, I respect and admire greatly, but there were only 11 colleagues who voted against the government. The majority was 44, which is pretty healthy majority. Obviously, there was a healthy debate about some of these provisions and how we could make sure the bill is effective, but that debate has now happened and the bill has now passed the House of Commons with a pretty good majority. On your question about opinion polls, I think ultimately the British public want to see the government deliver. I think the fact we've got small boat crossings down 36% year on year is a welcome step, but obviously the pledge is to stop them completely, and this bill is an important part of that. Another important issue is inflation. You know, inflation, look, you mentioned last October. Last October, inflation was 11.1%. It's now down to 4% and forecast to go down a lot further in the course of this year. And I think if we can deliver on those things, stop the boats, halve inflation, get economic growth going, cut the debt and so on, then the British public will respond well to that.
But you're not delivering, though, are you? Because we saw inflation yesterday go up to 4%, up from 3.9. So that's one of the pledges that currently isn't being met. And those boats keep on coming. I mean, you're mentioning the fact that those numbers are down. Many would say that's in large part down to the poor weather. And even yesterday, I mean, GB News estimates that there were 350 people coming over on small boats yesterday, even in these freezing conditions. So we haven't stopped the boats, have we? And we're still a long way from meeting the other pledges.
Well, so the pledge was to halve inflation, and inflation actually has been halved, obviously, because 4 is a lot less than 11.1. It did tick up by 0.1%. The path is not always a straight one. And in America and Europe, there was a little tick up in inflation as well. But overall, very big reductions from 11.1 down to 4. And all the economic forecasters, to the extent you believe them, say that it's going to go down even further in the course of the rest of the year. On the boats, yes, down 36%. That is really, really good. But the pledge, as you say, is to stop the boats completely. And that's why the bill passed through Parliament, or passed through the House of Commons yesterday. And on the weather point, so I asked about this. And last year, 2023, there were only 4 fewer calm days than there were the previous year, 2022. So the 36% reduction was largely not to do with the weather, although that plays a bit of a part as well. But as I say, the pledge is to stop the boats completely. That's what we want to do. The bill passed the Commons last night. We're doing work with the French to get people stopped on the beaches, breaking criminal gangs, stopping boats getting into Europe in the first place by working with countries on the edge of Europe, because they come ultimately from China into Europe, these boats, and then the Rwanda scheme, which is really important as well. And taken together, I'm confident that will stop the boats, and that's what we've got to do. That's the promise. We've got to deliver it.
Yeah, but as you say, the Rwanda plan is a key part of that. There's a lot of your colleagues who aren't convinced. They may have not voted against it last night, but they aren't convinced that it is strong enough. Even if it is, it's got to get through the House of Lords, which is, going to take months. There's going to be months of this parliamentary ping-pong, isn't there, where presumably the Prime Minister needs some sort of result on this pretty quickly.
We do want to get this done quickly. We want to see these flights taking off in spring. I don't think it'll take too long in the House of Lords. The bill is only, there's only about 5 substantive clauses, which is not that long. I'm doing another bill, the Criminal Justice Bill at the moment, which has more like 80 clauses. So it's a pretty short bill. Ping-pong, you can go do the ping-pong back and forward almost every few hours. That can happen pretty quickly. So I don't think the Lords are going to be delaying this a great deal of time, and I think the House of Lords would also understand this is a critical government policy, a critical pledge. Parliament, the democratically elected House of Commons, has expressed its view pretty clearly. So I am expecting pretty quick progress on this in terms of getting the thing passed in its entirety.
All right, Minister, we'll leave it there because, frankly, you look absolutely freezing. It's about -3 out there at the moment.
It is freezing
thanks very much.
Here. It is freezing.
Yeah, all right, go and get warm, get a cup of tea.
Thank you.
Thank you. We've got 1 minute, Norman Baker and Renee Hunterkamp. Norman, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, he's right to say that it needn't take a long time through the House of Lords in the sense that is it a short bill and ping-pong can happen quickly. I think the issue is that the House of Lords feels quite strongly on constitutional issues, and they think there are significant constitutional issues, so I think they'll be more robust and more difficult for the government than they would normally be on bills.
OK, Renee?
Yeah, and they're also quite pro-migration. We've seen that with the, Justin Welbys of the world, and there are 26 of those who vote en masse. I think it's going to be a difficult time in the House of Lords.
Are we going to see anything by spring, do you think?
No.
No.
Oh, well, that's going to be a problem for
And
the
time
PM.
is
I'm not sure
what
we'll
the
even
Prime
see any.
Minister has.
I'm not sure we'll even see any flights before the election, to be honest with you.
Right. What, and then even
I don't
if
think
the
any
election's
flight.
late in the year?
Even the election's late in the year, I'm not sure there'll be any flight. There'll be legal challenges. This isn't going anywhere fast.
There might be another Home Office minister who goes.
There might be.
Oh. Well, look, your thoughts on that, please, if you would. What would you have done last night if you were a Tory member? Would you have voted for, against, abstained? Let us know. Talking about weather and how cold the minister was, let's see what it's like where you are with Alex.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, Alex Burkill here with your latest GB News weather forecast. It's going to be a cold day again with a harsh frost for many of us this morning, but watch out for some hefty snow showers, particularly across northern parts. For northern Scotland, we have an amber snow warning in force because following on from some heavy snow showers already this week, we could see a further 15 to 20 centimetres of snow building up in some places. Some disruption is quite likely. Also some wintry showers affecting parts of Northern Ireland and down western and eastern coastal parts of England and Wales too. Further inland though, lots of dry and sunny weather, but still feeling cold. Temperatures only rising a few degrees above freezing for many, and some parts of Scotland staying below freezing. Through this evening and overnight, we will see more showers for a time, continuing to feed down on a brisk northerly wind before some more outbreaks of more persistent snow push their way in across parts of Scotland through the early hours. Further south, it's a generally dry picture with lots of clear skies, so again temperatures are going to drop, many places falling several degrees below freezing, so a frosty or possibly even icy start for some of us tomorrow morning. On Friday, a bit of a north-south split across northern parts, particularly Scotland. A lot of wintry weather, outbreaks of snow continuing for a time could cause some further disruption here, but a generally dry and again sunny theme further south. Yes, it is going to feel cold, though temperatures may be up a degree or so compared to today, and in the south, generally light winds here, but turning milder as we go towards this weekend with the potentially stormy weather too.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests, and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's 7 o'clock on Thursday, the 18th of January. Today, Sunak survives another day. The Prime Minister secures victory over his flagship Rwanda policy that clears the Commons with only 11 Tory MPs rebelling.
The Princess of Wales is reportedly doing well after undergoing abdominal surgery, as King Charles also prepares to be treated in hospital next week. Our royal correspondent Cameron Walker has the latest.
Yeah, the princess has spent her second night in hospital following that abdominal surgery. Meanwhile, the King remains at Birk Hall in Aberdeenshire with the Queen. He will be in hospital next week. More details shortly.
Mother of 2-year-old Bronson Battersby reveals her son was too small to reach a fridge full of food before he starved to death next to his father's body.
The Democratic Unionist Party thwarts the latest attempt to recall Parliament as workers in Northern Ireland prepare to strike over public sector pay.
The Foreign Secretary and the Argentinian President agree to disagree over the Falklands following talks in Davos. So we're asking, should Britain return the islands?
Yes, lots of emails coming in on that one, so do keep them coming in to us. In the meantime, Paul Coit is here with all your sport.
Australian Open, I'm going to see if I can get through these. So we've had one British win already. We've got two losing. Emma Raducanu still yet to play. And Iga Swiatek shows why, as the world number one, you should never, ever give up.
No, you shouldn't. You might want to give up when you see the weather, though. Here's Alex.
Morning, it's another cold day with lots of snow and ice warnings out, including an amber snow warning for parts of Scotland. I'll have the info shortly.
Good morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Yes, Falklands.
Loads of emails coming in. Luke says the Falklands were never Argentina's. How can we return them? And Steve says, I was 17 when the Falklands conflict happened and I watched every bit of it take place. We all contemplated signing up because that's when Britain was still a proud, patriotic country. Many people were injured and many lives were lost. Now they're simply saying, let's hand it back to Argentina.
Yeah, I mean, loads of you getting in touch saying they were never owned by Argentina. Sharon says that, Trevor says that. I'm just looking online. And at various times, the islands have had French, British, Spanish and Argentine settlements. But Britain reasserted its rule in 1833. So I suppose that's the argument, isn't it? But there you go. Andy in Dorset says, giving the Falklands back would be an insult to every soldier who died fighting to retake them. I mean, look, it's a no-brainer, isn't it? I'll tell you who we're going to talk to about this a little bit later on, Simon Weston. So he will have a very strong view on that, I would imagine. Keep your thoughts coming through. gbviews@gbnews.com.
Oh, and just one from David in Barnsley, a greeting, who says, morning, it's -7 when I got in my car just now. As we say in Yorkshire, it's brass monkeys.
Well, just to
What does that mean?
Brass monkeys means it's cold.
Very cold.
Very cold. And it's just to counter that from Tim, who's watching us from Melbourne, Australia.
Oh, very nice too.
Where it's currently a mild 24 degrees.
Oh, Tim.
Thanks, Tim.
Good for you, Tim.
Yes.
Wish we were in Melbourne right now. That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
I'd be anywhere that was 24 degrees, frankly.
Me too.
Now, the Prime Minister has managed to fend off Tory rebels and get his revised Rwanda bill passed through the House of Commons. It aims to stop legal challenges against the Minister's plans to send asylum seekers to the East African country.
Well, dozens of Tories found the bill to be flawed, but only 11 revolted. Last night, one of the people who abstained, Lee Anderson, told GB News his reasons for the decision.
I wanted to vote no, but when I saw that lot in there laughing, there's no way I could support them above the party that's given me a political home.
Well, let's talk to former Conservative advisor Fred de Fossard and the journalist Mike Buckley. Good to see you both. Fred, let's start with you. Is this a sigh of relief for the Prime Minister, a show of strength even for the Prime Minister, or is he just looking increasingly weak?
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me on here. I think it's a Pyrrhic victory for now, but while he's made his way through these common stages, the fundamental flaws with the policy still remain. I think the amendments being put forward by MPs like Robert Jenrick came from Jenrick's expertise and understanding of immigration policy, from his experience in the Home Office, and I think it's unfortunate the Prime Minister didn't listen to them, because while the bill may make its way into law, I think we'll reach the same fundamental problems of an interminable level of appeals, which will shoot holes in the policy and sink it before the general election.
Mike Buckley, what do you make of all of this? Because Rishi Sunak can breathe a sigh of relief for now, can't he? But we are now going to face parliamentary ping-pong. This could go on for an awful long time in the House of Lords.
Yes, it could, and that, of course, is the way that our system is set up. The Lords is there to scrutinise legislation put forward by the Commons, and if it thinks that it is, say, incompatible with international law or is otherwise objectionable, then it does amend it and then send it back to the Commons. And that's the Lords doing its job, and the job that it is there in our Constitution to do. So it's exactly right that they do that. And I think we're all aware that they will have significant concerns about this bill because of it flying so close to the on international law, as well as its impact on our society and its impact on the people who are here to seek asylum in our country. So I think that will happen. But you're right, for Sunak, this gets him over a crisis point. But of course, by choosing to pursue this bill, he sets up recurrent crisis points for himself over the coming 6 to 8 months before the general election. So he's already choosing his own bad headlines, so that they are inevitable, whether this gets through the Lords and then through the Commons again, or not, and then becomes law. There will then be crisis points over whether deportations happen or whether people are, putting in legal appeals. Or the Enver Solomon, who runs the Refugee Council, for example, yesterday, he was saying that he thinks this will force asylum seekers to go into hiding rather than engage with authorities because they will be afraid of being deported to Rwanda. So this is likely to lead to more problems of not knowing where people are in the UK rather than fewer problems, which in theory is the problem.
Forgive me, but Mike, aren't people going into hiding anyway? I mean, we know that the number of people coming over is absolutely fueling the black economy.
Well, the government apparently had earmarked over 4,000 people to go to Rwanda, and apparently they've lost contact with all of them. That isn't, fair enough, these people should not be evading the authorities, though, given they're threatened with being deported to Rwanda, you can see why they might. But this is the government's responsibility. If these people are in the UK and they're not documented or legally registered members of the British population, it's the government's job through the Home Office and through the police to keep tabs on these people. And if they're not doing so, that's simply a failure of governance. So the responsibility lies with the government to actually take care of these people, give them decent housing and work out where they are.
Fred, what do you make of Lee Anderson there? We just saw a clip, didn't we, saying that he actually wanted to vote down this bill. He wasn't in the 11 that voted against it, but he said he didn't in the end because he didn't like to see the Labour Party laughing at him. And how much do you think there is that sentiment now within the Tory party that they do not want to simply hand over the government and the reins to the Labour Party? Because it would spell the end, wouldn't it, for Rishi Sunak?
I think that's a very good point. If you look at the votes on Tuesday, we had over 60 Tory MPs rebel on amendments. And that's a very, very different prospect from an MP's point of view to rebelling on the third reading, which is voting on the entire bill. Jacob Rees-Mogg made a very good point on GB News, I think, speaking to Chopper about this, that when you're voting on an amendment, you're voting about how to improve the bill or tweak the bill, but you're not voting about the principle of the overarching bill. Clearly, MPs like Jacob supported the overall intention of the bill and wanted to back it at third reading, and that's a similar situation for Lee. When you vote against the government at third reading, you're making a great statement against the piece of business, and as we're coming towards the end of a parliament, it's not like in the middle of the parliament. If this was happening 2 years ago, MPs would be in a far safer position to either vote down the bill and make proposals for another one to come back with a decent amount of time before a general election, or they would be much happier to see the piece of law go all the way through and work out its implications. But because we're quite late in and we don't have the Fixed Term Parliament Act like we had in 2017 Parliament, where MPs were able to vote down Theresa May's business repeatedly without threat of a general election, the threat of a general election coming within the next year and less than the next year is at the front of lots of MPs' minds, and collapsing the government the threat of collapsing the government was ultimately too big a risk for them to take.
Ultimately, Mike, in all of this, you can understand, can't you, why the PM is pursuing this as much as he is, because we know there is a great swathe of British public opinion that says The migration issue and the illegal migration issue, the two together, are of great concern to the British public, and the public generally want to see something done.
I don't really understand why he's pursuing it, because if you look at public opinion, the number one things that the public care about are the economy, the cost of living crisis, the NHS. Immigration is on there, I think, as number 4 issue. So you're right, there are voters that care about
yes,
it.
But forgive me, but immigration ties into all of those other areas.
Well, it does, but often in ways that are not discussed by the government or indeed by the media. I mean, in terms of regular migration, people who are given visas by the government to come and work in the UK, we need those people because we've got an ageing population because of government underfunding of the NHS and social care, and indeed in part the pandemic, but in large part because of the underfunding of and mismanagement of the NHS. We've got a growing problem with working age people who aren't able to work. We need people of working age coming into the country. The government know that, which is why they've been running around the world handing out visas so people can come and work in our hospitality industry or in manufacturing or in the NHS. But they're unwilling to make that point to the general population, so people are understandably concerned. Although, admittedly, last year's numbers were overinflated by Afghanistan and Hong Kong. So, actually, those numbers will inevitably come down over the next few years anyway. So, last year was an outlier. But I do also understand why people are concerned about the asylum system, not really because of the numbers, because the numbers in reality aren't that great, but because of the way that it's been mismanaged. The government haven't been processing claims, which means we are wasting millions on hotel bills on a daily basis. And indeed, they are losing to people who are disappearing into society. I'm concerned about that. We shouldn't have people come into the UK whose claims haven't been assessed who are disappearing into society. Their claims should be heard, and if they're asylum seekers, they should be allowed to stay, and if they're not, they should be returned. But similarly, the government's failing to return them. But this bill resolves none of those issues at all, and it also won't do what the government say it will do, which is stop the boats. It will have zero impact on the boats.
Well, that we shall just have to wait and see, won't we? Fred de Fossard, Mike Buckley, good to see you both this morning. Thank you. If you've got a thought on that, let us know. gbviews@gbnews.com.
Now, the Princess of Wales is reportedly doing well after undergoing successful abdominal surgery. She's expected to remain in hospital for up to 14 days before continuing her recovery at home.
Well, all this comes as King Charles prepares to be treated for an enlarged prostate next week. Buckingham Palace, though, says the condition is benign.
Well, our royal correspondent Cameron Walker joins us now for more on this. Very good morning to you, Cameron. And two very significant announcements yesterday in very quick succession. You can see the front page of the newspaper today are of Catherine and King Charles. Lots of people very worried now about two of our most senior royals.
Yeah, Ellie, it was a double whammy of royal health scares yesterday, as you say, within very close succession to one another, an hour and a half between the two statements. So at 2 o'clock yesterday, Kensington Palace released a statement regarding the Princess of Wales. She has undergone abdominal surgery at the London Clinic, which is a pretty top central London hospital, but she's expected to remain in that hospital for 14 days, which perhaps suggests the significance of the kind of surgery Her Royal Highness had. Prince William, her husband, is expected to split his time between being with his wife, the Princess of Wales, and looking after his 3 children. I understand that Prince George, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis have not visited their mother in hospital yet. They attended school as normal yesterday. But as well as the initial period of recovery for the princess in hospital, she's then expected to spend 2 to 3 months at home in Windsor, recuperating from her surgery and the ailment she had, which perhaps suggests again the significance of the kind of operation Her Royal Highness had. But it does mean that we're not expected to see the princess in public until at least after Easter. There were reports that the Prince and Princess of Wales were expected to go on a tour of Italy in the spring. That's no longer happening, or at least it's been postponed from my understanding. The Prince of Wales in the immediate time is also going to be postponing his engagements to look after the princess and indeed his 3 young children. And then, as you say, we had the news about His Majesty the King's health an hour and a half afterwards. He's got an enlarged prostate and he will be going into hospital next week for some treatment. It's incredibly rare that we hear specific medical details about members of the royal family, but I'm told that the reason the King wanted to release that details is because he wants to encourage men his own age, if they have symptoms, to seek treatment.
Yeah, which is quite remarkable in and of itself, I think. Cameron, for now, thanks very much indeed. Yes, just looking at the treatment for an enlarged prostate. It was all. I mean, look, I think it's remarkably brave, actually, of someone who is in the public eye as much as the King. I mean, surely nobody more so, to talk about something so personal. He clearly believes it's something that he can use his predicament to have some good for the older men of the population.
Yeah, I applaud him for this. I think it's a really brave thing to do, as you say. Yeah. Paul says, I think the King has told us about his prostate operation because he wants to make more men aware of prostate cancer. Prostate cancer kills more men than any other cancer because it is painless until it's too late. So he thinks it's a really good thing.
Yeah, not that he's got prostate cancer.
No.
We should point
but awareness to
the prostate.
To the prostate, and talking about it as well. I mean, even on the way to the office this morning, it's all everybody was talking about on the radio.
Really?
So, I mean, it's in the national conversation now.
Well, yeah.
What he wanted.
Yeah, well...
By the sounds of things, he's raising awareness, isn't he?
Good on him.
Do let us know what you make of that. gbviews@gbnews.com. And at 15 minutes past 7, let's take a look at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom.
The US government have carried out a fourth round of strikes on Houthi targets in Yemen. It comes after the rebel group launched a drone that hit a US-owned ship in the Gulf of Aden. In November, the Houthis began attacking such vessels they claimed in response to Israel's military operation in Gaza.
A Fujitsu software developer has revealed the faulty Horizon IT system was too expensive to fix after he appeared in front of the Post Office inquiry. The defective system led to over 700 sub-postmasters being wrongly convicted of fraud. Fujitsu has apologised to all victims.
Train station ticket machines are charging people, apparently in some cases, twice as much compared to going online to buy your ticket. Research from Which says that fares online were cheaper about 75% of the time. In November, plans to close rail ticket offices were abandoned after a massive public uproar. Just a quick one on that, because we can offer some advice. We have some experts here at GB News. Martin says, when my friend travels from London to Diss, he can get a return ticket for as little as £14. When I go from Diss to London, the cheapest price is £69. And I don't know why. So Robin, from our team here, who is an absolute train nut, says, Martin, you may be buying an on-the-day, anytime single, which is the most expensive type of ticket you can buy.
Well, there you go.
So you need to get aware of the different ticket types. And it gets confusing because there are, like, so many different tickets.
Well, it is so confusing now. And you get the split saver tickets now, don't you? If you do a very long journey, you might get yourself a wad of tickets because that's meant to be the cheapest way. It's all very complicated. I think you're probably best online, though, aren't you?
Well, probably, if you can get
a bit
online.
of shopping around. Let us know, gbviews@gbnews.com. Now, Lincolnshire Police Force have referred itself to a watchdog after 2-year-old Bronson Battersby was found dead next to his father's body in Skegness.
Yeah, the toddler starved to death after his father, 6-year-old Ken, suffered a heart attack.
Well, his mother claims that the boy was too small to reach a fridge that was full of food before he died. According to reports, Lincolnshire police were contacted on 2 occasions before the bodies were discovered.
Let's talk to the founder of Freedom from Abuse, Marilyn Hawes, who joins us now. Look, really good to see you, Marilyn. We're talking about such a tragic case here. It does raise questions, doesn't it, as to why... Yeah, what was happening in terms of social services, what was happening in terms of police in keeping tags on this family, in gaining entry to the home under these conditions?
Well, the thing is that social services aren't allowed to just go in. That's the point. And I suppose I think more sits in the lap of the police failings, more that than the social services. I feel sorry for the poor social worker who actually, did call the police. I mean, she could have gone, I suppose, to the magistrates and got the right of access. There's a lot of questions to be answered here. But how can a police? I mean, 3 times, was it, that the social worker phoned. They had trouble getting the landlady's key. Well, of course, you're going across Christmas and New Year. Not an easy time. The poor little boy. I feel so sorry for the mother, the family, and the social workers, because I think for once they probably stepped up and did the right thing as much within their powers, because in 2012, I think it was, about 300 social workers overwhelmingly wanted the loss of right of entry to be dismissed, and that they could, if they were worried about a vulnerable child or adult, make access to the house. And that hasn't yet gone through. So I think there's lots of questions and maybe some changes that need to be made. But he's only a little boy, a little child. I would have thought very likely dehydration. I mean, they've only got little kidneys. And the whole thing is utterly tragic. And his trauma, seeing his father on the floor there. I mean, you try and sit in the mind of that little lad. It's heartbreaking, really heartbreaking. But, you know, whose head is going to roll? Who in the police didn't do anything, didn't act? I mean, here we go again. Sorry.
It is the most upsetting story. I mean, even if you just imagine his last moments, poor Bronson Battersby, only just so young, 2 years old, you can't even imagine, really. What lessons can be learned from this? Of course, changes need to be made. We know that the police have referred themselves to the watchdog over this. Do you think that social services should have the right to actually gain access to a property? Because it's reported that they did get to that house on at least 2 occasions, and they couldn't actually gain entry.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest change that needs to happen, because I've had a similar case where nothing wrong happened in the end, but it was a mother who was heavily on drugs, and I reported it in to social services, and they went round. There was no reply. They went round again. There was no reply. And they went round again. And of course, they put a note through the door to say, we've called and you weren't there. And this mother that I know of was living in a pigsty, frankly, and it gave her mother time to actually tidy the place up. So when the social workers actually got access, everything looked very fine. It was 3 years later, something else happened, and the child has now gone back to its natural father, and she's been saved. But that could have been another tragedy waiting to happen. I think this is the biggest thing, that social workers should be allowed, given a certain set of circumstances, to make entry. I really do. And then on top of that, it's about time people stepped up, did their job properly, went the extra mile. I mean, how can you possibly ignore 2 or 3 phone calls from social services? They're supposed to be working in harmony, not like little tiny silos. It is a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace on the part of the police. But I think for once, the social worker did do as much as she could reasonably be allowed to do. It's tragic, the poor little boy. It's his little sweetheart. I mean, I've got a grandchild exactly the same age, and you suddenly, you think, oh my gosh, you know, poor little chap, because he looks a healthy little soul. But, you know, if you don't get water, you know, hydration is so important. It'll be very interesting to see what comes out of this case study. But, I mean, a lesson to every police constabulary: take every call from a social worker seriously. Yeah. And I do hope the College of Social Workers does manage to gain this access, so that it makes the social worker's job more effective. Yeah. I think that's the biggest lesson.
Yeah, well, let's hope so. Marilyn, good to see you. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you for having me.
Such a beautiful little boy. Such a tragedy. OK, let's take a look at your weather, shall we now, with Alex Burkle.
Good morning, Alex Burkle here with your latest GB News weather forecast. It's going to be a cold day again, with a harsh frost for many of us this morning, but watch out for some hefty snow showers, particularly across northern parts. For northern Scotland, we have an amber snow warning in force, because following on from some heavy snow showers already this week, we could see a further 15 to 20 centimetres of snow building up in some places. Some disruption is quite likely. Also some wintry showers affecting parts of Northern Ireland and down western and eastern coastal parts of England and Wales too. Further inland though, lots of dry and sunny weather, but still feeling cold. Temperatures only rising a few degrees above freezing for many, and some parts of Scotland staying below freezing. Through this evening and overnight, we will see more showers for a time, continuing to feed down on a brisk northerly wind, before some more outbreaks of more persistent snow push their way in across parts of Scotland through the early hours. Further south, it's a generally dry picture with lots of clear skies, so again temperatures are going to drop, many places falling several degrees below freezing, so a frosty choppy or possibly even icy start for some of us tomorrow morning. On Friday, a bit of a north-south split across northern parts, particularly Scotland. A lot of wintry weather, outbreaks of snow continuing for a time could cause some further disruption here, but a generally dry and again sunny theme further south. Yes, it is going to feel cold, though temperatures may be up a degree or so compared to today, and in the south, generally light winds here, but turning milder as we go towards this weekend with the potentially stormy weather too.
OK, still to come for you this morning. This has got you going on the emails today. Should Britain give the Falkland Islands to Argentina? We're going to be talking about that in just a moment.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 7:28. Good morning to you. Now, here's a shocker. The Argentinian president is calling for the UK to hand over the Falkland Islands. following crunch talks with Lord Cameron in Davos.
Yes, both countries have agreed to disagree over the sovereignty of the Falklands. But what do you think? Should we give the islands back? Well, so many emails coming in on this issue. There is such a strong sense of feeling on this.
Yeah.
Jim says they never belonged to Argentina. The people there voted to remain as British.
Yes.
Sheila says it's up to the islanders, not us.
Well, that's a very valid point, I think. Let's talk to Falklands War veteran Simon Weston. Simon, as always, it's great to see you. I mean, I'm a little bit surprised that this is sort of even coming up for discussion now. They just won't let this go, will they?
It's very much the same old rhetoric, really. They keep banging this drum, rattling the sabre, unsettling the islanders who are trying to live in peace and just trying to get on with their lives, trying to just live and work the best way they can, like everybody else. But the Argentinians, they've got to distract everybody from the terrible financial situation that they find themselves in yet again, which was one of the main reasons of the war in the first place. They had raging inflation at about 1,000%, and they needed to distract the general populace, which is send people to war, send people abroad. You know, politicians have used that as a go-to for years. You know, if things are tough at home, go away. Well, this time they sent their people, and we ended up having a fight for something that was never theirs. You know, they never owned the islands. In 235, 240 years, they've never owned the islands. When they say they claimed the islands, they weren't even a country. They were the nation of states. They didn't even have a national flag or a parliament or a government of any sort. They had nothing. So the claim is baseless. It's just something to distract people. But there's a lot of people in Argentina that believe the islands are theirs. So it's an easy go-to just to keep ramping up that support.
Yeah, I was just about to say, Simon, it must be very popular with voters back in Argentina, because, as you say, we hear this rhetoric time and time again, don't we? How does it make you feel as a veteran of the Falkland Islands, and how does that make you feel when you think about people that you fought alongside, perhaps those that lost their lives in the Falklands, when you hear this sort of rhetoric and talking about giving the Falklands back?
Well, first and foremost, we can't give something back that never belonged to anybody. But it is very alarming that people and politicians find the weakest link. You know, they go to something that's an easy win for the people that vote for them. But we have to call into question some of the mental state of this chap. If all reports are true, the president of Argentina consults a spiritual guide who then talks to his dead dog to get advice on how to run a country. If that is the case, you know, it's quite alarming that you got somebody who's unstable like that, then claiming that they're going to take the islands or want the islands. They haven't got a military to do it. They've underfunded that for the last 40 years because of what happened with the junta when it all happened in '82. They haven't got an air force. Their navy is where we left it, at the bottom of the ocean, sadly. But at the end of the day, they can't take it by force. So what they're doing is they're going around, and it's like a school ground bully. They're getting everybody to back them up, to pick on the smallest common denominator. But they won't ever try it again, I don't think, not in my lifetime anyway, in a military force. But they will keep going to the UN, they'll keep going to things like this in Davos, they'll keep doing what they do. But all it does is it distracts people from the real blazing issues of what's going on there. For my fellow veterans, most of them will be dismayed that this is coming up yet again and it's being carried on, and people are carrying the same boring rhetoric from South America. I wish they'd just leave it alone, you know. Everybody's content there. Let it alone. There's enough war going on in the world and enough difficulties in the world. We don't need any other lunatic adding to it.
Very well said. Simon Weston, it's a pleasure to see you, as always. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Well, I think Simon just said there what everyone's thinking. What everyone is thinking.
I
There's
think so.
no way in a month of Sundays would the UK government ever say, yes, you can take over Argentina.
Yeah.
Over the Falklands now. Maybe we should take over Argentina. That would be the way.
That would be a very
forward.
different conversation.
Yes, wouldn't it just?
Yeah.
All right, let's see what's happening in the world of sport. Paul Coyte is here. Good morning.
Good morning. It's all pretty much Australian Open stuff.
Yeah, so what's going on right
for
now?
you? There's loads going on at the moment because with the time difference, this is when all the big games are. We'll start with Novak, though, for a bit of fun, shall we? Novak Djokovic, who I think 10 times, I think it's 10, I just lose count of Australian Open wins. Always starts a little slow, but there was almost something that, oh, well, here we are. Look, this is him explaining. I wasn't expecting this right now, but explaining exactly what happened when he had an argument with the fan.
Confront somebody, unfortunately for him, he didn't have the courage to come down.
Oh, well, there you go.
Oh, that's it.
That's something fascinating.
That's it. That was quite an insight, wasn't it?
He's always a scintillating. He's very charismatic.
It was, yeah, it was, particularly in that clip. I thought it was very charismatic.
Yeah.
Cut a long story short.
Someone heckled him.
Yes, there was a heckling, and whoever did heckle him did not have the nerve to go down and say it to his face, because that's basically what he said. He took so much. I still don't know exactly what he said. Apparently it was quite bad, but I would like to know exactly what he said, but nobody seems to responding to that, especially Novak.
But he didn't see it through, did he? He didn't come down and say it to his face.
So anyway, he's actually playing an Argentinian, Thomas Echeverry, who was the conqueror of Andy Murray the other day. So that's who Novak plays in the next
Is he done now, Andy Murray, do you think?
I think Andy is. I don't think he's done as in his career. He will continue to play. But I think
big stuff.
I think really Wimbledon would be the perfect goodbye, wouldn't it?
It would be.
If you're going to say goodbye, two-time winner, home tournament, that's going to be the one.
And the crowds love him.
Exactly. But the thing is, though, if you've done something like that since you were so young and so good and so successful, and you can still play, but maybe not to the level that you were. He's still making money and he's still doing it, but maybe it's time to end. Now, Emma Raducanu, who could have come to an end, we're expecting her to play. This keeps going on. It was supposed to be 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, but she's going to be on court against China's Wang Yifan, who could play Katie Boulter, who's the British #1, but she is 1 point away from going out of the Australian Open. So it seems very doubtful that there is going to be a Raducanu-Boulter third round game. Who knows whether either of them are going to be there. Cameron Norrie, he's beat Giulio Zeppieri from
Italy.
Correct. How did you guess?
I know my tennis.
2 sets down, 1 in 5. Jack Draper's lost to Tommy Paul of the USA. And one more for you, and that's Iga Swiatek from
Poland.
Correct. Honestly, you're
quite good at this, Stephen.
It is very good. So, Iga Swiatek.
I'm not as stupid as I look.
She was playing Danielle Collins of the States, and this is how you prove a champion. She's the world #1. I think we've got just a little bit of this here. Fine, there we are. That's a little more interesting than the chat that we've heard. But she was down 4-1 in the third set, all ready to go home. You're thinking it's all over. The world #1 is out. She then won 5 games on the bounce.
She's very eager, you see.
That's it. She's very eager. Yes, she is very eager.
Lovely.
She's very good. And so she's never won the Australian Open, but this is her year.
Could be her year. Paul, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Fortunately, we'll see you again next week.
Oh, I'm afraid so.
Oh.
And it's all changing, isn't it?
Never ends. What's
Never
changing?
ends. All the tennis, it's all kicking off.
Well, it is. That's why
It's
he's here.
changing all the time.
It's
Very
up to
good.
date.
I know.
Constantly.
On the money. I just,
On the money.
Yeah,
Thank you very
keep it going.
I think that belongs to somebody else on the show.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, look,
Good
time
try.
for the pay-per view in just a couple of minutes. Don't go anywhere.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious?
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
7:41, good morning. Let's see what's in the papers this morning with Dr. Renee Hunterkamp and former Lib Dem and Home Office Minister Norman Baker, who got the memo about the purple.
Yes, and I didn't.
What happened to you, Renee?
Yeah, out in the cold.
I'm sorry.
Sorry about that.
We'll include you in the group text next time.
Can we focus on the Sun, Renee? Too tiny to save. And this is look at Bronson Battersby, which is, frankly, the most heart-rending, horrific thing that I've seen in a long time.
Absolutely horrific. And I think we're losing sight here of some of the responsibility for this story, and that's why I picked it. So I do think there are questions to be answered by the police and by social services. But I also think that perhaps we ought to be looking at parenting, and we seem to be absolving parents of the responsibility for their children in so many scenarios of late. So this is a mother who had 2 other children. This is a child who was already vulnerable, so you have to ask why. And she went away and didn't have contact with her 2-year-old for 2 weeks. Now, frankly, I cannot even imagine going a day without speaking or having contact with my other half over my 5-year-old. I really can't, because she's the centre of our lives. Everything I do is in her protection and her betterment. And that, for me, is what parenting is about. So I think, yes, the police should have done a welfare check on the day and should have broken into the house, and there are questions to be answered. But we mustn't forget that the social workers and the police, in very difficult circumstances, are the safety net for poor parenting. So it kind of stuck in my craw yesterday to hear the mother saying, social workers could have saved my baby. Well, actually, you could have saved your baby.
Well, look, I think, whereas I do feel obliged to say We don't know the circumstances. We don't quite know what was going on in that relationship or with her directly. But I think you raise a very valid point. Yeah. Let's just leave it at that. I think there are questions that need to be answered, but we haven't got the answers to that.
Norman, let's take a look at the Telegraph, shall we? And
yes.
This is about buying tickets on machines at the railway station could cost you twice as much as if you bought them online.
Yes, and this is something which I looked into quite a lot last year with my Campaign for Better Transport hat on at the time. And the basic principle should be that wherever you buy a ticket, you get the best price for the journey you're making.
Yes.
And it's the same price whether you buy it online at the booking office or a ticket machine. That should be the principle we work to. And it doesn't work this way. Now, looking at the story here, which has been put together by Which, the campaign group Which, they pick up that the ticket prices can vary enormously between the ticket machine and what you get online. Now, what you get online, of course, sometimes is the ability to buy a split ticket, and some of the problems arise from this, because, as you may know, if you go from, let's say from London to Newcastle, you might be cheaper to buy London to York and then York to Newcastle on the same train than buy a through ticket, which is a nonsensical arrangement, but that's actually how split ticketing works. You save a lot of money by going on these websites, which then construct this journey for you of a succession of different tickets.
Yeah.
On the same train.
On the same train. You do it, providing the train actually stops at the stop. You don't get off, but providing the train actually stops, you can save a lot of money. Now, you can't do that with a ticket machine, so that's part of the problem.
Yeah, but as you say, it is absolutely ridiculous that we're in this day and age where you have to start going through all that sort of process.
Yes.
Why aren't we being provided with the cheapest possible ticket?
That's exactly right. I mean, you need a university degree to get the best possible ticket. And I get people, friends of mine, in fact, relatives of mine, ring me up and say, can you get me a ticket from A to B? Because I know how the system works, having been a former transport minister. Whereas, why should all these people have to go through this rigmarole to get the best possible ticket?
Is it not also discriminatory against those who cannot or don't want to use online services for whatever reason? They could be elderly, they could be visually impaired, they could be learning impaired, and they need to go to a ticket office to buy their ticket. And if their ticket is guaranteed...
Or you could just be not a former transport minister.
Well, you could be that as well.
Insider intel.
Actually, the ticket office themselves, the people in my experience are quite helpful in ticket offices.
Yeah.
But they won't necessarily have the best ticket either, because the split ticket option is available online and it won't necessarily be available to the booking office.
No.
So that you quite possibly get 3 separate prices for the same journey.
But it's just the fact that the ticket machines are presumably run by, well, I don't know who runs them, but the operating companies or Network Rail or whoever it is. But it's...
Well, they're actually wrongly processed because, for example, I know...
But if they're the official ones, that should be where you get the best price.
Yes, I know, but they're not, you see, because they don't deal with the split ticketing option partly. But also, they don't give you the best... I mean, I know the first train out of Lewis in the morning to London, I can get a cheap ticket. But I also know if I can go to the ticket office and speak to a real person, I can get that quite early. I can then go down the platform, get a cup of coffee from the excellent place down the platform too. If I have to go to the ticket machine, they will only give me the best ticket price, the appropriate ticket price, 10 minutes before the train goes. It doesn't give me enough time to sit down and have a cup of coffee.
I see a new business here for Norman called Let Norman Do It.
Well, honestly, if it saves us a load of money on the train...
Because it's so expensive to travel by train in this country. I mean, you need the savings.
Well, actually, the funny thing is that actually it can be very cheap. I've got some really, really cheap rail fares. I got to Aberdeen first class for £57
I mean, how are you
on the
managing
train.
that?
But you have to just know what you're doing within the system. But if you don't know what you're doing, you'll pay over the odds.
Which most of us don't. Renee, what's this in the Times from Catherine Birble-Singh?
I think this is really interesting, actually. So Catherine Birble-Singh was the headmistress who set up a free school in Wembley, quite a disadvantaged area in London. And it's not non-selective, it's a normal school in the area.
She's very no-nonsense.
She's very no-nonsense, but the result of that has been she has GCSE and A-level results which leave all other schools in the area in the shade. She's getting fantastic response by being very old school, traditional. I was telling Norman, you get a detention if you don't come to school with the right pens in your pencil case. It's that strict. She has introduced a rule in the school which says there will be no prayers. Students of any religion are not allowed to go and pray. A Muslim student is now suing the school because they want to pray. And I'm sorry, this is what I feel about this. School is for learning, it's for education, and this is disruptive for other students, even if it's taking place in the lunch hour. And I think if parents feel that strongly or students feel that strongly about their religion, which is fine, there are faith schools. So take the child out and put them in a faith school. There is no place for religion in a secular school. And sadly, I feel she's going to lose this because religion is a protected characteristic under the Equality Act, and she shouldn't. The government should step in here and say our state schools are secular. No.
As they do in France, I think, because of a different approach in France. I totally agree with all that analysis. I'd even go further in terms of education and say that this strict approach, which I had, by the way, when I was learning, is absolutely correct. And it astonishes me that people can come out, intelligent people can come out of school, the age of 18 or 16, whenever they come out, unable to read and write properly or add up properly. I mean, how can we get people going through the education system not having that result at the end? It's absolutely basic.
And not accepting authority because they've had no discipline at school. The interesting thing is countries like Singapore now use our old GCEs, which we would have sat.
The O-levels.
The O-levels. They buy them from us and they teach to that standard and have much better outcomes than us. And they also believe in didactic learning, where students all sit facing the teacher at the front of the class who is teaching the class. It's about instilling in students the things that they're going to meet later in life, surely.
Yes, absolutely. A structure, a proper structure.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I do. I'm slightly torn on the religious thing. I don't know. But then again, I went to a church school. And so,
which is fine.
So it was all part of the... it's what we did. But so in that sense, I wouldn't want to lose it. But say if it's a multicultural, multi-religious school, then perhaps you just don't do it.
The point was made earlier on, Marini, that it's absolutely right that if people feel that strongly, they can go to a faith school. But people also feel strongly they don't want religion in school. Some people feel that very strongly. So why should they have it forced on them?
And Catherine said, if multiculturalism was to succeed, her school would never allow segregation. And it is a form of segregation, of course. If you've only got a certain percentage of the school doing this, it's a form of segregation in the school. And she says we all must make sacrifices for the whole school.
Yeah.
OK, Norman, tell us about this flight of fancy in the sun.
This is, to me, extraordinary. We've got Concorde engine for sale on eBay for £680,000.
You tempted?
No, not really. Haven't got £680,000 in my head. I certainly wouldn't be spending on a Concorde engine. I mean, what are you going to do with it? This is an enormous thing, which the seller's based in Farnborough and Hants. It's got a BA Science certificate. Well, so what?
Yeah, well, it's complete with afterburner. I love the fact it says pre-owned on it. 654,000 at the minute, or best offer.
168 people are watching it.
But what are you going to do with it if you buy it?
Well, put it in the garage, I think.
Exactly.
I think this does just demonstrate that some people have too much spare cash lying around and not the right ideas of what to do with it.
This is great. The condition that says not able to fly but perfect to dismantle and repurpose into collectible pieces of furniture or art, Norman.
Is that right? Do
you
an
you
art
put it on the wall.
Yeah.
Or a very powerful lawnmower.
No, that's quite interesting, though, isn't it? Because actually, I can see why people would do that.
What, make a lawnmower?
Well, no! Make bits of art and things out of it and say, this is from an original Concorde engine and here's a bit of paper to prove it.
Tracy Eamonn, you can make a piece of art out of a bed without having to worry about buying £680,000 of Concorde engine.
Something good.
Would you pay £654,000 for a bit of art, though?
No.
That you'd have to make yourself, by the way. That's not done.
I wonder how many bits there are in an engine. That's the question.
Millions. When I went down to Parker Pen, when they were still in my constituency, and they gave me a tour around Parker Pen, a fountain pen had 43 different parts in it.
Really?
So how many's going to be in a Concorde engine?
Enough to make lots of money from little bits of art.
Yes, maybe.
Maybe we could start a business out of this, I think. Very good. Look, he's into the finer details over here. You're reading all the fine print.
Yes, and it was when it flew and who flew it and all this sort of thing. I mean, there's a lot of detail. It's 6 metres long, 18 feet long.
5 feet high. Oh, it's big.
3.5 tons.
You would want an engine on a plane to be big, wouldn't you?
Yes,
you would.
Very true.
Yes.
Right, how long have we got? 1 minute. We've got.
I'm fascinated by that, though.
You're not going to get him off this now.
I could hit buy it now.
No, don't. Have you got 650,000?
I've hit buy it now.
Oh, you need to sign into your eBay account.
Yeah,
OK, we'll let you do that. In the meantime, Renee, tell us about these giant tortoises.
This is a really sad story, isn't it?
Oh.
So they've actually found...
Thanks for that, Renee. I thought we were going to cheer us up at the end.
We've only got 40 seconds, Renee.
OK, so endangered tortoises, these are on a vulnerable list. They weigh 550 pounds each. 7 of them have been found dead in a forest near Exeter. And they believe that smugglers have smuggled them in. They died in transit and they've just dumped them there. And this is why we need to crack down on the trade in illegal animals, endangered animals. It's disgusting.
It is
really
disgusting.
sad.
Such beautiful animals as well, isn't it? Oh, it's so sad. Well, thank you very much for that, Renee. That was lovely.
Cheers
note
up. Thank you.
Renee and Norman, thank you very much indeed. Now, Alex Burkle, how's your weather?
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, Alex Burkill here with your latest GB News weather forecast. It's going to be a cold day again with a harsh frost for many of us this morning, but watch out for some hefty snow showers, particularly across northern parts. For northern Scotland, we have an amber snow warning in force because following on from some heavy snow showers already this week, we could see a further 15 to 20 centimetres of snow building up in some places. Some disruption is quite likely. Also some wintry showers affecting parts of Northern Ireland and down western and eastern coastal parts of England and Wales too. Further inland though, lots of dry and sunny weather, but still feeling cold. Temperatures only rising a few degrees above freezing for many, and some parts of Scotland staying below freezing. Through this evening and overnight, we will see more showers for a time, continuing to feed down on a brisk northerly wind before some more outbreaks of more persistent snow push their way in across parts of Scotland through the early hours. Further south, it's a generally dry picture with lots of clear skies, so again temperatures are going to drop, many places falling several degrees below freezing, so a frosty or possibly even icy start for some of us tomorrow morning. On Friday, a bit of a north-south split across northern parts, particularly Scotland. A lot of wintry weather, outbreaks of snow continuing for a time could cause some further disruption here, but a generally dry and again sunny theme further south. Yes, it is going to feel cold, though temperatures may be up a degree or so compared to today, and in the south, generally light winds here, but turning milder as we go towards this weekend with the potentially stormy weather too.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's 8 o'clock on Thursday, the 18th of January. Today, Sunak survives another day. The Prime Minister secures victory on his flagship Rwanda policy that clears the Commons with only 11 Tory MPs rebelling. Olivia Utley has more throughout the morning.
A right royal scare. The Princess of Wales is doing well after undergoing abdominal surgery, as King Charles also prepares to be treated in hospital next week. Our royal correspondent Cameron Walker has the latest.
The Princess of Wales spent her second night in hospital following that abdominal surgery. Meanwhile, the King remains at Burke Hall in Aberdeenshire with the Queen. He will be in hospital next week. More details shortly.
Mother of 2-year-old Bronson Battersby reveals her son was too small to reach a fridge of food before he starved to death next to his father's body.
The Democratic Unionist Party thwarts the latest attempt to recall Parliament as workers in Northern Ireland prepare to strike over public sector pay. Our Northern Ireland reporter Dougie Beattie has more.
It's deadline day for Chris Heaton-Harris. Northern Ireland still with no government. He must now call an election or extend legislation, and all with the backdrop of the biggest public sector strikes.
Dougie, thank you. Paul Coyte's got your sport.
OK, Australian Open. Jack Draper is out of the Australian Open, as is Katie Boulter, although Cameron Norrie is through and Emma Raducanu is playing right now. This is almost rhyming. Have you noticed as I'm doing this?
Very on the
FA
money.
Cup. Got some of those for you. And also I love the story about it's like an amateur referee who then got called up.
The Wolves fan.
Lovely.
We'll talk about that later as well.
Brilliant. Paul, thank you. Good morning. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Morning, it's another cold day with lots of snow and ice warnings out, including an amber snow warning for parts of Scotland. I'll have the info shortly.
Loads of you getting in touch on the rail prices issue. Yes, it's just common sense. Phil says, come on, guys, it's the same with online airlines. You see the advertised price, and by the time you get to the pay section, it's never near that price. Same with online train tickets. I don't know. Adrienne says, I want to always use a ticket office when going on the train. But I also like visual staff on platforms and at the tubes. Don't change it. I think it is all changing. ultimate.
Well, yeah, but then if you're getting the best deals online, maybe you're best to avoid the ticket offices unless something changes. Steve mentioned, we were talking about almost needing the intel, don't you? You need to know the way the system works in order to get the best deals. Steve says very few people know about split tickets and staff don't seem to be trained to know about them either. I travel to London Victoria from the South Coast once a week and I save money on a day return by buying a ticket from home to Aldershot, from Aldershot to Clapham Junction and then another ticket to Victoria. This costs me £39 instead of £70. But if you didn't know that...
Ouch, it's nearly half price.
How would you save money? It is almost half price.
Yeah, I mean, it's that's properly crackers. But is this a regulation thing? Does it need to be regulated more so that we all, you know, whatever you go on, it can't be that difficult that, you know, you get onto a ticket machine or the person behind the counter gets onto their machine and it just works out what is the cheapest option.
And if it is split tickets, shouldn't it just be doing that automatically? Similar story from Lee in Cornwall. He says he splits his ticket himself and it brings the price down to £32 from £60. So again, half price if you split the ticket.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't aware of it. I don't quite know how to do it, but I will be doing some Googling on that one. Right, our main news this morning, and the Prime Minister has managed to fend off Tory rebels and get his revised Rwanda bill through the House of Commons.
Well, it aims to stop legal challenges against the minister's plans to send asylum seekers to Rwanda.
Well, earlier we spoke to the Home Office Minister, Chris Philp.
On the third reading vote last night, there were only 11 colleagues, colleagues who, by the way, I respect and admire greatly, but there were only 11 colleagues who voted against the government. The majority was 44, which is a pretty healthy majority. Obviously, there was a debate, a healthy debate, about some of these provisions and how we could make sure the bill is effective, but that debate has now happened and the bill has now passed the House of Commons with a pretty good majority.
Well, we're joined now by our political correspondent, Olivia Utley, who's in Westminster for us this morning. Very good morning to you, Olivia. And Rishi Sunak must be breathing a sigh of relief this morning.
He will be breathing a sigh of relief this morning. At some points yesterday, it looked as though it was actually possible that the government's bill could be defeated at a third reading, which would have been catastrophic for the government. It's hard to overestimate that. The last time a bill was defeated at third reading was back in 1979, I think. And obviously, this is a real tenet of Rishi Sunak's premiership, this Rwanda bill. That didn't happen. So for now, Rishi Sunak is feeling pretty chipper, but there are plenty of problems left for him down the line. The first of them being the House of Lords. Now the legislation will go to the House of Lords. The Conservatives don't have an overall majority in the House of Lords, and a lot of Conservative peers are further to the left of the Conservative Party. They're more of the kind of one nation ilk, that is, Conservative MPs and peers who are worried that the bill actually goes too far and gets too close to breaking international law. So it's very likely that the Lords will amend the bill, and they're more likely still to do that because of the way that Rishi Sunak won last night. Yes, in the end, the bill was passed with a majority of 44, but because of all the disquiet yesterday, peers will feel emboldened to amend the bill, change it and send it back to the House of Commons. The House of Commons will probably vote down any amendments to the bill, but then it'll go back to the Lords. And overall, even if the bill ends up being unamended, because the government in the end has the power to deny any Lords amendments, the whole process will take quite a long time and will further damage trust in the Conservative Party. That's a big issue for Rishi Sunak. Another issue for Rishi Sunak is that the public don't like the spectacle that they saw last night. Some polling published by YouGov, published by The Times by YouGov late last night, shows that the Conservatives have gone down to 20% of the vote share. That is really, really shocking. And basically what happened yesterday was we had a whole day of very public Tory infighting. That has thrown the public spotlight on what's going on, the sort of machinations of the Tory party. If you like, the Conservative Party was airing its dirty linen to the public yesterday, and the public didn't like that. Another problem for Rishi Sunak is that, yes, his MPs might have begrudgingly voted through that legislation at third reading last night so as not to walk through the no lobby with Labour, But they're still not happy. I've heard that letters of no confidence have gone in from the Prime Minister about the Prime Minister late last night. So there is still a lot of disquiet among the Prime Minister's own backbenchers. That's three big headaches for Rishi Sunak as we head into election year.
Yeah, but as you say, you know, he can be sort of happy that he's where he is this morning. But we still have this sort of promise, don't we, or at least indication, that there will be planes taking off by the spring. Well, I mean, that seems very unlikely to happen.
It seems very unlikely to happen indeed. As I say, we're expecting lots of parliamentary ping-pong, as they call it, the bill to be amended in the Lords, back to the Commons, etc. That's likely to take about 2 months. We also have the issue of Rwanda itself. Rwanda has signed a treaty which essentially sort of bolsters up its asylum programme to make it safer. But that treaty now has to be ratified into Rwandan law. That process is going to take quite a long time too. I've spoken to quite a few Conservative MPs who, although they back the Rwanda bill, feel quite frustrated that the Prime Minister has chosen to make it such a central part of his illegal immigration policy. Lots of people would argue that actually the Conservatives have done quite a good job over the last year in bringing down the numbers of illegal migrants coming to the UK. They did a deal with the Albanian government, which has seen the number of Albanian migrants reduced by 70%. And overall, the number of migrants crossing the Channel in 2023 was down nearly a third on 2022. But instead of sort of shouting about those successes, the Conservative Party has talked a lot about this Rwanda scheme, which, as you say, Stephen, is very unlikely to do what the Prime Minister wants and actually get migrants leaving on the runway by the spring. It feels as though Rishi Sunak has painted himself into a corner with this one.
It does a little bit. Olivia, for now, thank you.
Now, the Princess of Wales is reportedly doing well after undergoing successful abdominal surgery. She's expected to remain in hospital for up to 14 days before continuing her recovery at home.
Well, it all comes as King Charles prepares to be treated for an enlarged prostate next week. The palace says the condition is benign.
Well, our royal correspondent Cameron Walker joins us now for more on this. Two significant health updates from the palace yesterday, Cameron, and now we can see photos of Catherine and King Charles across all of the newspapers this morning. Obviously, very worrying news for the British public.
Indeed, it was a double whammy of royal health scares yesterday within an hour and a half of each other, really. Of course, first of all, we had the statement from Kensington Palace confirming that the Princess of Wales had undergone what they described as planned abdominal surgery. We're told that it is non-cancerous. However, it's clearly serious enough to warrant being in hospital for 10 to 14 days. Following that 10 to 14 days period in hospital, the Princess of Wales is also expected to spend around 2 to 3 months at home in Windsor recovering from her abdominal surgery, which is significant because it does mean that all her public engagements which were planned are now having to be postponed or cancelled. Her Royal Highness, in a statement released by Kensington Palace, apologised to those, but it would affect. There were reports as well that the Prince and Princess of Wales were planning a trip to Italy, being sent by the Foreign Office in the spring. From my understanding, that has also been postponed. As for the Prince of Wales, he's expected to split his time between being by his wife's side in hospital and looking after his 3 young children at home as well. Now, from my understanding, Prince George, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis spent a full day at school yesterday. They're yet to visit their mother in hospital, but I think Prince William is really showing the fatherly side of himself and splitting his time between the two, his family really, and putting his family first. He is also expected to not be carrying out many royal duties in the immediate future. Then, of course, an hour and a half later, following Kensington Palace news, we get a statement from Buckingham Palace confirming that the King has been diagnosed with an enlarged prostate, benign, and he is expected to go to hospital next week for treatment on that. Now, it's incredibly rare that we get those specific medical details from members of the royal family, but I'm told that the King really wanted to make his diagnosis public because he wants to encourage other men of a similar age, if they are experiencing symptoms items to get themselves checked out. Now, the King has had to cancel a number of meetings and engagements he had planned for today and tomorrow at Dumfries House in Ayrshire. He remains in Burke Hall this morning, which is his private house near the Balmoral estate, with the Queen. And as I said, he'll be in hospital next week, which means this time next week we're going to have the King and the future Queen in hospital.
And what will this mean for the royal family, Cameron? I mean, there is going to be great concern about two very senior members of the royal family now not being able to take part in engagements.
Yeah, absolutely, Ellie. And then by extension, the Prince of Wales is also taking some time out, which really just leaves the Queen, as in Queen Camilla, and the less senior royals carrying out public engagements for quite some time. Now, I do understand that no councillors of state are required to deputise on behalf of the King when he goes in for his treatment in hospital next week. So a councillor of state deputises on behalf of the King if he is too ill to carry out his duties. Although we're not seeing the King in public following his treatment next week, he is, I understand, still able to carry out those red box duties. So going through government papers, signing off different bits of official documents, etc. But we're not going to see him in public. So still work going on behind the scenes. But as for the Princess of Wales, it appears it's a bit more serious. She's in hospital for almost 2 weeks, suggesting the significance of the surgery she has, and then 3 months also of recovery at home. We haven't seen the Princess of Wales since Christmas Day on that walk to the church in Sandringham, and we're not expecting her to carry out any public engagements until at least Easter.
OK, Cameron Walker there for us at Kensington Palace. Thank you very much indeed.
Now, Lincolnshire police have referred themselves to a watchdog after 2-year-old Bronson Battersby was found dead next to his father's body in Skegness.
Yes, the toddler starved to death after 6-year-old Ken suffered a heart attack. His mother claims the boy was too small to reach a fridge that was full of food before he died. Well, according to reports, Lincolnshire police were contacted on 2 occasions before the bodies were discovered.
Well, the thing is that social services aren't allowed to just go in. That's the point. I suppose I think more sits in the lap of the police failings, more that than the social services. I feel sorry for the poor social worker who actually, did call the police. I mean, she could have gone, I suppose, to the magistrates and got the right of access. There's a lot of questions to be answered here, but how can a police, 3 times, was it, that the social worker phoned? They had trouble getting the landlady's key. Well, of course, you're going across Christmas and New Year. Not an easy time. The poor little boy. I feel so sorry for the mother, the family, and the social workers, because I think for once they probably stepped up and did the right thing as much within their powers, because in 2012, I think it was, about 300 social workers overwhelmingly wanted the loss of right of entry to be dismissed, and that they could, if they were worried about a vulnerable child or adult, make access to the house. And that hasn't yet gone through. So I think there's lots of questions and maybe some changes that need to be made. But he's only a little boy, a little child. I would have thought very likely dehydration. I mean, they've only got little kidneys. And the whole thing is utterly tragic. And his trauma, seeing his father on the floor there, I mean, you try and sit in the mind of that little lad. It's heartbreaking, really heartbreaking. But, whose head is going to roll? Who in the police didn't do anything, didn't act? I mean, here we go again.
The most heartbreaking case there, that was Marilyn Hawes, the CEO of Freedom from Abuse, who spoke to us a little bit earlier on in the programme.
Now, the political turmoil in Northern Ireland is continuing as the deadline for restoring a power-sharing government rather rapidly approaches.
Yes, it's been unable to function since the May 2022 elections because the DUP's refusal to nominate a speaker in protest over the Northern Ireland Protocol.
In the meantime, more than 100,000 public sector workers, including teachers, nurses and bus drivers, are walking out today in their ongoing dispute over pay.
Well, it's going to be the biggest strike in Northern Ireland in 50 years. Well, joining us now is our Northern Ireland reporter, Doogie Beattie. Very good morning to you, Doogie. So that power-sharing deadline getting closer and closer, but that political turmoil, it rages on.
Indeed. In fact, at midnight tonight, the Secretary of State has to decide whether to call another election to the Assembly, but that will more than likely bring it back exactly the same parties in exactly the same position. So he must then decide, is he going to extend legislation for the Northern Ireland Civil Service to continue to run Northern Ireland? Now, the annoying thing about this is that the deal is dangerously close, and most of it comes down to credibility. The DUP want to see legislation passed with what they have in the deal before they jump, because you remember that Boris Johnson promised them, Liz Truss promised them, Article 16 was going to be triggered, etc., and then the framework document came in. So they're saying no, legislation first, then we will have a government. But there is outlined problems with this around triangular trading, how raw materials move from a third country to a third country, because Britain now is a third country outside the EU, so goods, raw materials coming in will be very, very hard to find. And in all of that, that should be with all the parties in Northern Ireland stressing that, so as manufacturing and farming in the agri-food sector can move on as they are. But in all of that, we now have public sector strikes, the largest in about 50 years. And joining me now is the General Secretary of NIPSA, Carmel Gates. Carmel, how important is it to you to have a government in Northern Ireland?
Of course we want an Assembly back immediately, Doug, but we want it with stable financing. A government that is unstable and doesn't have the funding we need to pay into the future, but also to guarantee services into the future, is not going to help us. We've not had pay parity now for 13 years, so we want to ensure whatever is in the package is enough to sustain and pay awards now and give us pay parity, but also to ensure that that funding is recurrent and that we are not back here this time next year because, again, there's no money in the budget.
And how is these strikes going to affect Northern Ireland today?
Well, everything's at a standstill. You can see behind me the school is closed. Everything's closed. Government offices are closed. So it is at an absolute standstill. I know it's causing huge disruption. It's probably affecting business and costing a lot of money. So we're saying to the Treasury, don't let this keep happening. We're saying to the Secretary of State, don't let this keep happening. We need the funding. We need him to allow the Assembly back up and running, a properly funded Assembly back up and running that provides for services that are being destroyed here, and the fabric is being torn out of services in Northern Ireland.
Do you feel as if you're being used as pawns in this?
Yes, to some degree. We certainly believe that, the Secretary of State, as happened in the 2019, the Assembly came back after health service strikes. We're worried, we've been worried that he's been almost allowing strikes to happen to try and put pressure on the DUP. We don't agree that we should be used as political pawns and economic pawns for political reasons. So we're very angry that our members have to be on picket lines today when we want to be in work and we want to be properly paid, as are our colleagues across the water.
OK, so there you have it. It's more not only about the framework deal, it's also about how the Northern Ireland Assembly is funded, and more importantly, how those ministers in that Assembly will become accountable.
OK, Doogie, thanks very much indeed.
You can see it's very frosty there in Northern Ireland.
We all want to be outside in this weather.
Doogie Beattie wrapped up very nicely there in a GB News jacket. I wonder if that's ours, whether he's made that himself.
I don't know. I was just, I was thinking the same thing, because I haven't seen any of those. He just got a sticker from somewhere.
Yeah, it's very good accessorising.
There are stickers, because I've got a sticker on my bit of paper here. Look at that.
Yeah, that is
I don't know why I've got a sticker on it.
We've got very posh this morning with all our branded merch. But it is very cold, isn't it? So Alex Burkle has the update for you.
Good morning, Alex Burkill here with your latest GB News weather forecast. It's going to be a cold day again with a harsh frost for many of us this morning, but watch out for some hefty snow showers, particularly across northern parts. For northern Scotland, we have an amber snow warning in force because following on from some heavy snow showers already this week, we could see a further 15 to 20 centimetres of snow building up in some places. Some disruption is quite likely. Also some wintry showers affecting parts of Northern Ireland and down western and eastern coastal parts of England and Wales. Wales too. Further inland though, lots of dry and sunny weather, but still feeling cold. Temperatures only rising a few degrees above freezing for many, and some parts of Scotland staying below freezing. Through this evening and overnight, we will see more showers for a time, continuing to feed down on a brisk northerly wind before some more outbreaks of more persistent snow push their way in across parts of Scotland through the early hours. Further south, it's a generally dry picture with lots of clear skies, so again temperatures are going to drop, many places falling several degrees below freezing, so a frosty or possibly even icy start for some of us tomorrow morning. On Friday, a bit of a north-south split across northern parts, particularly Scotland. A lot of wintry weather, outbreaks of snow continuing for a time could cause some further disruption here, but a generally dry and again sunny theme further south. Yes, it is going to feel cold, though temperatures may be up a degree or so compared to today, and in the south, generally light winds here, but turning milder as we go towards this weekend with the potentially stormy weather too.
Now, still to come for you this morning, should campaigners, anti-abortion campaigners that is, be allowed to get close to abortion clinics so they can talk to people who are going in? Well, it's controversial. There's been some legislation, but maybe it's not going to be as strong as some people were hoping. We're going to be debating that in a couple of minutes.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise
and who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. The time is 8:27. Now, new legislation designed to protect women from protesters outside abortion clinics is likely to be watered down by the Home Secretary.
Yeah, under the drafted guidance, campaigners can approach women attending abortion clinics. They can conduct silent prayer and engage in discussion with the women. This is within the 150-metre wide safe access zones.
But we're asking this morning, is this right? Joining us now is the Director of Affinity at Gospel Churches, Graham Nichols, who says campaigners should be allowed near those abortion clinics, and journalist and author Ella Whelan, who says they should be kept away. Very good morning to you both. So, Graham, let's start with you then. You think that these campaigners should be allowed close to abortion clinics. Why?
I think it's a reasonable right of protest and seeking to inform people. I think it's a common sense piece of legislation or guidance rather, about the legislation to just accept the fact that we do in this country have the right to protest and to try and influence. We have picket lines, we have big protests on all kinds of occasions. And I do realise it's a really sensitive issue for the ladies involved who are going there. But I think there's nothing wrong in providing them information. And I think it does take away that ludicrous situation where someone who's praying silently at a reasonable distance from the clinic and not influencing anyone gets arrested. So I think it's just a common sense approach from the government on this particular issue.
Ella?
Well, I don't think, by the way, I don't think protest needs to be reasonable. In the public square, in settings where public debate happens, you can protest however you like, whether that's silent prayer or shouting about your anti-abortion views. That is freedom of protest. But I think we have to recognise and be a bit adult here that an abortion clinic, much like a hospital or anywhere else that provides a healthcare service, is different from your town square, your street, your public area, because the patients who are entering into that area, in this case women, are you inhabit a different kind of being. You become vulnerable because you're going for a procedure potentially. You are not in the same space as someone who's going about and might see a protest on the road of an average day. And so I do think different rules apply in the vicinity of an abortion clinic, because you're not the same as just an average citizen going about their business. And the thing about a lot has been made of silent prayer, and I think it's a little bit of a red herring, because if you're going into something like an abortion procedure and you are, as I think most women who are going in there to have that, tussling with a lot of feelings and emotions and thoughts, even someone standing there holding rosary beads silently, even someone standing there and doing things like holding small knitted baby boots, can be extremely, extremely distressing. And, again, protests should be disruptful, distressing, impactful. But I think we have to recognise that an abortion clinic is in a specific area. And actually, I'm not the biggest fan of this bill. I really am not, because I think it, if you keep protesters 150 metres away or 200 metres away or whatever, you still have a ring of protest around it. It doesn't actually deal with the issue of abortion rights. I'd be much more in favour of decriminalising abortion completely, and so that you had clinics integrated within hospitals. Abortion was treated in the same as, any other medical procedure. We don't have protests like this outside hospitals for, kidney transplants or anything else. I think that if we changed the way that we saw abortion and treated abortion in this country, we would have a much better solution to these kind of issues.
There's a key point in there, Graham, that Ellie made, and it's because silent prayer is used a lot. I mean, for a kick-off, you can pray anywhere you like. You don't need to be in the vicinity of it. People gathering around in that way is, whether you want it to be or not, is intimidating, potentially bullying for those women going in, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, personally, I don't get involved in these kind of protests, so I'm already standing up for the right to do them. And I certainly don't want to bully or intimidate people. And I do recognise that there is emotional turmoil in this, but I am really interested in the rights of the unborn baby as well. And I think, of course, it's a traumatic time, but it's going to be an even more traumatic time for the unborn baby if the abortion goes ahead. So I think it's reasonable, in a polite way, to make the points. This may be the only opportunity the young mother has of hearing information or hearing alternative views or hearing about the consequences of taking a leaflet.
Forgive me, Graham, but that's not true, is it? I mean, look, and presumably anyone who's going for a termination would be well aware of the alternative, the arguments against this. They've got to be thinking about that, surely.
I don't think that's true. And having had experience of these things, it's not true that that everyone going to an abortion clinic is fully informed and fully ready at that moment. I mean, they're often traumatized by the situation they've got into of an unwanted pregnancy, and are not always well informed. So I don't think that's true at all. And I think it's reasonable to give information and to give opinion. And I think as a general legal precedent, we really don't want to start kind of isolating particular categories or areas where protest is not allowed. And in a context where there is lots of vocal protest in all kinds of contexts, which intimidates lots of people, which I'm not in favour of, but kind of accepting it happens. It can happen outside an abortion clinic. And the rights of the unborn baby are significant. I think it's often forgotten in this, as though the woman is the only person involved.
Ella, I'll just let you come back very briefly to that. We are out of time, but just very briefly, Ella, last word to you.
Well, I suppose the thing that I'd say is that we have to think about who is the priority in this situation, and the woman being the one who is pregnant, it being her body in question. I think we need to reassert as a society that it is the woman and her decisions and her autonomy that always take priority. And, the issue of protest is a very important one, but Graham hasn't been able to come back on me on the fact that when you enter into a clinical setting as a patient, different rules apply. And in terms of information, I have to say that looking at a lot of the leaflets that are given out to women in this very bullying and intimidating way, a lot of it is full of misinformation, arguments that abortions can lead to cancer and all sorts of things. So, this is a thorny issue, but I think the question always for me is, who is most important? Is it the autonomy and availability of choice for the woman, or is it your own religious, personal, political views, you external from the situation? For me, it's always the woman that takes first place.
OK, right, we've got to leave it there. Ella, Graham, thank you both very much indeed for talking to us about what is, as you both said, a very difficult issue.
Yeah, no, it certainly is. Paul Coit is with us now with all our sports news, and there's a lot of it this morning.
There
isn't
is.
there?
We'll start with the magic of the FA Cup. Do you still feel
the magic?
You still feel the magic of the FA Cup?
We're always feeling the magic, yeah.
Always going to be the magic. Everton managed to get past Crystal Palace last night, 1-0. Everton are really up against it at the moment. They've got this 10-point penalty, and now it's been announced along with Nottingham Forest that it looks like there might be another one for breaking FFP rules. But anyway, a good win for them. So at least it's something for the fans to cheer, because it's always the fans I feel sorry for. They're going to be home to Luton in their next round. Nottingham Forest were 2-0 up against Blackpool. You think this is going to be a walk in the park. It'll be very easy. Blackpool come back, 2-2, goes to extra time, and then Nottingham Forest score the winner. So Chris Wood there, so unlucky there.
Good fight back though from Blackpool.
Yeah, it was, absolutely. Bristol City beat West Ham on Tuesday. Bristol Rovers, that's who they'll be playing next, by the way. Bristol Rovers playing against Norwich. They went 1-up against Norwich City. Again, looked like there'd be a slight giant killing, if we can call Norwich giants in this situation, but Norwich came back, won that game 3-1, but they are going to have to play Liverpool away in the next round, so...
OK. With that one. Should we go down under?
Yes. Shall we?
To the tennis?
Yes. Australian.
Yeah.
The Australian. Are you talking about the Australian Open?
I am, yes.
Emma Raducanu is playing.
Excellent, well done.
Yes, we got there.
Thanks very much.
That's okay. Thank you very much. Emma Raducanu, though, is losing to Wang Yifan. I'm sorry, built it up. Only one set so far.
She can pull it back.
Of course she can. Lost the first set 6-4.
Well, Cameron Norrie lost the first 2 sets, didn't he?
Exactly, and this is it's almost like the Andy Murray way of playing tennis. You know, you think it's all over, but they just keep going. That seems to be that British tennis thing. Cameron Norrie then against Giulio Zeppieri. You're familiar with his work, I know.
Yeah, it's very good.
2 down and then 1 in 5 sets. Who else have we got? We have Jack Draper lost to Tommy Paul, unfortunately, the USA, who's the 14th seed. Iga Swiatek. I do want to mention that because that's probably the best game or the best performance. Talking about coming back against adversity. She was 4-1 down.
That's not her, just to point out.
That's not her. She doesn't look too well in that one. But Iga, hopefully we will see Iga Swiatek against Danielle Collins of the United States. 4-1 down in the final set. You think it's all over. 2 breaks down and then goes and wins 5 on the trot.
Yep.
All about the momentum. So she came through and she's one of the favourites still for the title, world number 1.
Right. Okay. Excellent. Coity, it has
been a pleasure. Did you mean that? You didn't say that in like a...
Well, excellent.
Yeah, in a convincing
No, I didn't mean it.
Oh, OK, fair enough.
I was just like, thank heavens it's done.
Just be honest with me, my friend. That's
no. We'll see you tomorrow.
Look forward to it.
Brilliant stuff.
Thank you very much. We are... do you want to wheel me up?
Wheel me up? No, that's it. That's all you're getting. We've got the... we're going through the papers for you with Norman Baker and Rennie Honderkamp. That's in a couple of minutes.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
8:42. Let's have a look through the papers then this morning with Dr. René Honderkamp and former Home Office Minister Norman Baker. Morning, morning, morning. You two, René, let's start with you, should we? And I can hardly believe I'm looking at this. Post Office scandal part 2.
Yes, sadly. I mean, let's hope it isn't. But actually, apparently, some people have now come forward to Labour MP Kevin Jones, 5 or 6 people in his constituency who say that they were a victim of another system that was the pre-Horizon system called Capture. And they were convicted of exactly the same thing, a shortfall that they claimed wasn't them. So there's one guy, Steve Marston, 67, was convicted of fraud and false accounting after adopting the new system and suffered a £79,000 shortfall that he couldn't explain. So let's hope that it isn't actually that, but let's also hope that if it is, it doesn't take 25 years and an ITV documentary to get it on the front pages.
I'm so glad we're still talking about this, though.
I'll tell you what I find interesting, though, and it's just because you said it then, because the number of people I've heard refer to it as a documentary. It's a drama.
Docudrama.
It's a drama.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, but we're viewing it as a documentary.
But there have been documentaries before which haven't hit into the public consciousness half as much. I don't know what it was about the drama that made it so much.
I think Cathy Come Home was, back in the 60s, was the last thing that really had an impact on government policy in the same way as this has. But the question that I think we should answer as a society is why it is that it's an ITV documentary or drama documentary to take action when you've had reports on this going on in the papers and Private Eye and places like that.
Because you know full well that politicians respond to public outcry rather than anything else.
Yeah, well, it's sad because politicians have taken action earlier on.
And the other thing I think we need to take from this is we are increasingly moving people, as we've seen today with train tickets, to an online world. We're increasingly trying to get rid of cash, and that is a long-term plan, obviously, of many governments around the world. And yet we couldn't trust this computer system when everybody said we could, and anyone who questioned it was told that they were crazy.
Yeah, we believe machines, not people.
We believe machines, so we need to be very sure before we move into this kind of world.
We do. The only thing I'd say to that, which I find even more, worrying than just the whole system not being right, is the fact you say, people said you were crazy if you said it wasn't working properly. But actually, when you looked at all the evidence now, they knew it wasn't working properly. They just chose to ignore it.
Yes, that's right.
Which is it's disgusting, frankly.
Yeah, and it's thought now that there were warnings in the initial rollout of Horizon. So, before, I mean, this what the story is saying today. But even when Horizon first came out, that's 30 years ago. Yeah. I mean, it's just remarkable.
But did nobody think it cannot be the case that hundreds of sub-postmasters are committing offences? Nobody think that was really weird?
I guess what they did is they convinced themselves that these offences were going all of the time, but
they'd stumbled across it.
Had, highlighted them.
Let's have a look at Rwanda, Norman, should we, on the Times?
Well, what I wanted to pick up on, really, was a political story very briefly, which was just the YouGov survey in the Times that found support for the Conservatives, as we've reported this morning on the news, was down to 20%, which is where it was when Liz Truss was being forced out of office. And only 35% of Tory voters from last time actually believe the government's going to sort out the migration problem, and Labour's got a 27-point lead. So it's a very serious of bad news for the Conservatives. You have to ask why it is that that's the case and what they're doing about it. And I just observed, neutrally as it were, from outside, that the Conservative Party appears to think that moving further to the right will bring the public back on board. Whereas I just find this counterintuitive, because every single election's won in the centre, not on the extremes of either left or right. But that's just my thought. So, and the vote yesterday, sorry, the last point of the vote yesterday was about not having a general election. That's why they won the vote yesterday.
Yeah, I think that's a great soundbite that people trot out all of the time, that elections are won from the centre, so this move to the right will be a disaster. And yet we are seeing around the world and across Europe that all of the governments that have moved slightly to the right, and I don't mean far right, I mean centre-right, are actually winning ground now. And I think that actually is reflective of a dissatisfaction from the people that we have lost values, we've lost morals, we've lost, as we were talking about in the break, Norman, you know, family values and structure, and actually it's only the centre-right that's going to restore that.
Well, I hope that's not true. I mean, I'm not of the centre-right, I'm of the centre-left, and I certainly believe in the sort of values you and I were talking about during the break, as you were saying. So I don't think it's quite as simple as that. And, of course, we've seen elections in places like Poland where the left, as it were, have recovered ground. But I just think that we need to make sure that we go forward on the basis of the country with the policies which are designed to secure common consent across the population at large so far as we can. And I'm just concerned at the moment we're having unnecessary divisions between left and right in a way that's unhelpful to society.
Or maybe we are where we are because the politicians are not reflecting the common consensus of most people in the country.
OK, Renee, let's stick with you, shall we? Let's look at the eye, and flood defence plan has been slashed.
I mean, it's absolutely astounding, this. When we are seeing, you know, climate change, I think, exists. Whether or not we can actually alter it, I think, is questionable. But what we can do is we can mitigate against the worst scenarios. And flood defences have to surely be a major part of that. We are seeing more flooding, mainly, I think, because we have stopped much of our flood defence work. We don't clean drains anymore in London, so we regularly see flooded streets. We used to clean them all the time. I remember the lorries with their big suction thing coming along and cleaning drains. Most drains are blocked. But now the Flood Defence Agency, the Environment Agency, has cut back what it's going to do in terms of its projects. So it had £5.2 billion from the government, said it was going to do 2,000 projects, which either were flood defences or habitat improvements. They're now only going to do 1,500, and they're blaming inflation.
Well, the Environment Agency has had its budget cut quite significantly in recent years, and therefore it can't do everything it needs to do. But I totally agree that cutting back on flood defences is actually quite stupid, really, ultimately, but also quite serious. You know, when I was an MP in Lewis, we had terrible floods in the year 2000, and I went around people's houses, and they were distraught by the consequences of flooding. They'd lost, you know, what they were concerned about. They'd lost pictures of their family and mementos and stuff like that. They'd actually lost. Some of the floods were so bad that they flooded not just the basement and the ground floor, but the bedrooms of houses were flooded as well. It was that bad. So, of course, we need to deal with flood defences, and to cut back on this is actually irresponsible, I think, as much as anything else.
Well, it sort of is at the moment, but if there's not enough money, then what do you do? It's all this magic money tree business.
Governments find money when they want money, don't they? I mean, they found a lot of money. I'm not saying I'm against it, but they found a lot of money for Ukraine, for example. They found a lot of money to hand over to PPE contracts which don't work properly. So there's always money if they want to find it.
I think that's a really valid point. We sent this week, with no real consensus from the electorate, because it's been a long time since we've had an election, £2.2 billion to Ukraine.
Well, we promised £2.2 billion.
OK, we are going to send £2.2 billion, you know, and we need more money here at home. We can highlight every single day waste in the NHS that I could bore you senseless with working in it, waste in every government department. There's plenty of money, we just don't spend it very well.
Oh, well, that's an issue that we never seem to get to the bottom of somehow. OK, Norman, Daily Star has got something about an upside-down house. What earth's that?
An upside-down house. I've got the Daily Express with a bungalow. Is that the one you're talking about?
Oh, Eco House, yeah. Oh, it says Daily Star on mine. Oh, right.
The Star is something else. Well, same stable, of course, the Star and the Express. This is, I don't know if you can pick this up on the camera, this is somebody who's paid £13.5 million for a bungalow. There's a bungalow there, which isn't, in my view, particularly attractive.
What, 13.5 million quid?
But the funny thing is that he wants to demolish it. He's bought a house, and he wants to demolish it and put it up an Eco House.
But why is it, hold on, why that much money? Why does it cost that much money? Because it's not for the house.
house?
Well, I mean,
It's
it's a nice part. It's a nice part of Dorset, apparently, which is.
Has he bought half of Dorset to go with it?
Not half of Dorset. He's bought enough of Dorset to hold the bungalow. But the thing is, why would you buy a bungalow at this cost and then want to demolish it? And he's now being told he can't demolish it because it's regarded as a valuable structure. Well, I'm not sure personally. Subjectively, I agree it's a valuable structure. But he's been told he can't knock it down. That's what the argument's about. But, you know, if he wants to build a new eco-house, why doesn't he buy a plot of land? Why does he want to buy an existing building and knock it down?
Well, he must have bought it for the land, doesn't
Well, and why didn't he do his homework before he bought it to find out whether or not he would be able to demolish that house? And I think he should actually maybe give the spare money to the Environment Agency for flood defences.
More money than sense.
It's just the cost of it.
13.5 million.
For a bungalow, he wants to knock it down.
Bungalows are expensive, but my gosh.
And he's going to have to pay to knock it down if he wants to get away with it.
What is it, a 4-bed bungalow or something?
And it's going to cost £7 million for a new building, apparently, he wants to put up on there. So
He obviously has a lot of spare cash.
Yeah.
It's just beyond belief. I can't get my head around it at all.
No.
Unfortunately...
You're going to make me talk about moves, aren't you?
I am, just because we have got a bit... I was trying to fill the time so you didn't have to mention it.
In which case, I am going to hold up this picture because I think it's worthy of you. Yeah. So these are the moves that we're talking about here.
Well, they're not that big.
They are definitely moves. I had to do a double check to make sure it was a man.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, I mean, basically, this is a story about men should look out for signs of poor health. And one of those signs of the 8 are moobs. So basically, when a man develops what look like boobs, this is called gynecomastia. This is when men grow extra breast tissue. There are lots of things that can cause gynecomastia. Smoking cannabis can cause gynecomastia if you do it too much.
Is it extra breast tissue or just fat?
No, it is extra. It's their breast tissue and fat that grows, and it's hormonally driven. So it can be a sign that as a man, your estrogen, the female hormone, is actually too high and is out of sync with your testosterone. So that can lead to other health issues, so it's worthwhile doing that. But there are lots of other things, like checking your eyes for cholesterol. If you're young and you have a line around your iris, have you seen people with those white lines around their iris? Well, if they're under 60, that can be a sign of high cholesterol. Check your tongue. Is it white? Mine always is. And that can be celiac disease, apparently. I'm taking this from the Daily Star, everybody, so... Sorry, the Sun.
You should know. You should know.
Swollen feet can be a sign of kidney disease.
Right. But not always. I mean,
but you see, swollen feet can also be a sign of heart disease.
Yeah. Or pregnancy.
My feet didn't swell when I was pregnant.
Oh.
Did yours?
Mine did, yeah. They went up like balloons. You have no idea. But with all of these things, it's a bit like Googling an illness, isn't it? You've got to be careful.
You turn to page 24 in the Sun.
Yeah, so you've...
But actually...
If in doubt, see the doctor.
If in doubt, although I do think it is a good idea to just constantly give people little tips about their health so they are aware of little bits and pieces that are going on to look out for. So I'm not knocking it as a story.
What's this nail one?
So nail ridges can be a sign of thyroid disease.
Oh.
Oh, well. Yeah.
Right.
Bruising can be a sign of poor clotting.
I think if you see these stories, I mean, I'm not saying it's not good to have advice, but what I would say is that when you read a medical dictionary or a medical book, you come to the conclusion you've got everything that's in the book, don't you?
Well, you do. You always seem to have everything.
I actually find it... I often say to patients, tell me what you're thinking, because then they're able to tell me what's on their mind and what's worrying them.
Yeah, good point. Renee, Norman, thank you very much indeed. Here's your weather with Alex.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, Alex Burkill here with your latest GB News weather forecast. It's going to be a cold day again with a harsh frost for many of us this morning, but watch out for some hefty snow showers, particularly across northern parts. For northern Scotland, we have an amber snow warning in force because following on from some heavy snow showers already this week, we could see a further 15 to 20 centimetres of snow building up in some places. Some disruption is quite likely. Also some wintry showers affecting parts of Northern Ireland and down western and eastern coastal parts of England and Wales. Wales too. Further inland though, lots of dry and sunny weather, but still feeling cold. Temperatures only rising a few degrees above freezing for many, and some parts of Scotland staying below freezing. Through this evening and overnight, we will see more showers for a time, continuing to feed down on a brisk northerly wind before some more outbreaks of more persistent snow push their way in across parts of Scotland through the early hours. Further south, it's a generally dry picture with lots of clear skies, so again temperatures are going to drop, many places falling several degrees below freezing, so a frosty or possibly even icy start for some of us tomorrow morning. On Friday, a bit of a north-south split across northern parts, particularly Scotland. A lot of wintry weather, outbreaks of snow continuing for a time could cause some further disruption here, but a generally dry and again sunny theme further south. Yes, it is going to feel cold, though temperatures may be up a degree or so compared to today, and in the south, generally light winds here, but turning milder as we go towards this weekend with the potentially stormy weather too.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show, every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's 9 o'clock on Thursday, the 18th of January. Today, Sunak survives another day. The Prime Minister secures victory over his flagship Rwanda policy that clears the Commons with only 11 Tory MPs rebelling. Our political correspondent Catherine Forster has more.
Yes, after all the sound and fury, only Suella Braverman, Robert Jenrick and 9 others actually voted against the government on this bill. The Prime Minister will be hosting a press conference this morning trying to paint a picture of unity in the Conservative Party. Easier said than done at the moment.
Thanks, Catherine. The Princess of Wales is doing well after undergoing abdominal surgery as King Charles also prepares to be treated in hospital next week. Our royal correspondent Cameron Walker has the latest.
The Princess has spent her second night in hospital following that planned abdominal surgery. Meanwhile, the King remains at Burke Hall in Aberdeenshire with the Queen. He's expected in hospital next week for treatment. More details shortly.
Mother of 2-year-old Bronson Battersby has revealed her son was just too small to reach a fridge full of food before he starved to death next to his father's body. Our reporter Will Hollis will have the details.
It has been described as a tragic incident by Lincolnshire County Council, but how far do the failings go? I'm Will Hollis with the latest for you in Lincoln.
And Alex Burkle has your weather.
Morning, it's another cold day with lots of snow and ice warnings out, including an amber snow warning for parts of Scotland. I'll have the info shortly.
Morning to you, I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
I just wanted to say this morning, because there's a lot of planning goes into television, but I'm not an ideas person. I'm just not. I don't know, and I don't know why. It's just it's not how my brain works. I can do stuff but I can't. I'm not very good at coming up with ideas. But I would humbly suggest that you're in the same boat as me. She just said to me in the break, she said, we should have done something, it's in the papers, on the scone story. I said, what's the scone story? She said, it's how you say scone. And I said, scone? And she went, oh, yeah, that's it then, isn't it?
That's the end of the discussion. But some people would say scone.
Well, they would.
And I think that is something to talk about. But we agree, because we agree on everything, so we can't really debate that one.
How would you say scone? Scone? Oh, yeah, OK, next story.
Let's do a poll. Let's do a snap poll. Would you say scone or scone?
Scone, obviously.
Let us know. Also, how would you spell that in the GB view?
How would you spell it?
Well, you just say scone. I'd read it as scone, so I don't know how we're going to do a snap poll.
Would you say scone or scone?
Yeah, scone or scone.
Yeah.
Anyway, let us know.
Obviously, I mean, every which way, it's scone. But anyway,
I think I am onto something, not between us two, but out there.
I'm not sure you're an ideas person either. Let's leave that to the ideas people.
gbviews@gbnews.com. Do let us know.
You've got about 20 minutes to get those in.
Get those in.
Now, Rishi Sunak has managed to fend off Tory rebels and get that Rwanda bill passed through the House of Commons.
Yes, it aims to stop legal challenges against the minister's plans to send asylum seekers to Rwanda.
Well, earlier we spoke to Home Office Minister Chris Philp.
Third reading vote last night, there were only 11 colleagues who, by the way, I respect and admire greatly, but there were only 11 colleagues who voted against the government. The majority was 44, which is pretty healthy majority. Obviously, there was a healthy debate about some of these provisions and how we could make sure the bill is effective, but that debate has now happened and the bill has now passed the House of Commons with a pretty good majority.
Well, last night, one of the people who abstained from the vote, Lee Anderson, told GB News his reasons for the decision.
I wanted to vote no, but when I saw that lot in there laughing, there's no way I could support them above the party that's given me a political home.
Let's talk to our political correspondent, Catherine Forster. I'm slightly perturbed by Lee Anderson, Catherine, in the fact that he says, you know, well, it's when I saw them I decided I couldn't vote against the party that gave me a political home. You could come to that decision before you actually walk into the chamber.
Well, yes, but Lee Anderson has come in for a huge amount of criticism following his decision ultimately to abstain. A couple of things I think worth pointing out. I was actually there. I was talking to him immediately before he spoke to Chris Hope, and he was saying that he was all set to vote no. He'd gone into the lobby, and his former Labour colleagues, because of course, don't forget that Lee Anderson was formerly a member of the Labour Party. He worked under Gloria De Piero, the Labour MP for Ashfield. And then when she said she wasn't standing, he went over to the Conservatives, ran for the Conservatives, and ended up as deputy chair of the Conservative Party. So it was being in the voting lobby, his former Labour colleagues laughing at him and saying, look, he's going back to Labour. And he said he just couldn't do it. And so he went out and he abstained because he said he recognises that the Conservative Party has given him so much, and he feels that they've committed huge amounts of money to the constituency. And so ultimately, he felt his loyalty was to the party. And this is the issue, isn't it? Because, of course, we've had so much sound and fury from these 60 or so rebels over the last few days demanding the bill to be toughened up. I mean, they feel, many of them, that it's doomed as it stands and that they will be booted out of government off the back of this failure to stop the boats. But it's one thing to rebel on amendments trying to toughen up the bill. It's entirely a different thing to actually vote against the government at the third reading, because if Rishi Sunak had lost this vote, there would have been chaos, frankly. His authority would have been in complete tatters. We'd have had the Labour Party calling for a general election. It would have been an almighty mess. There is a general election looming. Isaac Levido, the election strategist, their sort of guru that led them to this 80-seat majority in 2019, was talking to them the other day saying, look, you've only got a tiny chance of winning, but that tiny chance, for that to even be possible, you've got to be united. And the Conservative Party at the moment seeming really anything but. Now, Rishi Sunak obviously will be breathing a sigh of relief. There's going to be a press conference this morning. He will no doubt being optimistic about the future, saying stick with the plan, it's heading in the right direction, crossings are down, pointing out their other achievements. But it's been really quite a wild ride, hasn't it? And this bill is going to go to the House of Lords. There's going to be another battle there. They expect it to clear the House of Lords by the end of March. And then who knows if the government can ever get those planes into the air to Rwanda. And of course, the Rwandan government yesterday basically saying, look, if you're not going to make this work, we're happy to give your money back.
OK. Catherine, for now, thank you.
Now, the Princess of Wales is reportedly doing well after undergoing a successful abdominal surgery. She's expected to remain in hospital for up to 14 days before continuing her recovery at home.
Well, this comes as the King prepares to be treated for an enlarged prostate next week. The palace says the condition is benign.
Well, our royal correspondent Cameron Walker joins us now for more on this. And we had two quite significant bits of health news from the royal family yesterday, Cameron, in very, very quick succession.
Yes, Ellie, it was a double whammy in terms of royal health scares yesterday, within an hour and a half of one another. So first of all, at 2 o'clock, we got that statement from Kensington Palace confirming that the Princess of Wales had gone into hospital for planned abdominal surgery. She's had that surgery. She has spent her second night in hospital. We're told that her condition is non-cancerous. However, it clearly is serious enough to warrant the Princess being in hospital for 10 to 14 days. And following that period in hospital, she's not expected to be seen in public again until after Easter. She's going to be resting at home, we understand it, in Windsor for 2 to 3 months. The Prince of Wales is expected to split his time between being by his wife's side in hospital and looking after their 3 young children at home. I understand Prince George, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis all attended school as normal yesterday. They're yet to visit their mother in hospital, but the Prince and Princess of Wales's duties for now appear to be on hold. There was reportedly a planned trip to Italy this spring. That, as I understand it, has been postponed, and the Prince of Wales is also not going to be continuing with duties for the time being as well. Meanwhile, the King, we have found out yesterday, has been diagnosed with an enlarged prostate. Buckingham Palace says he will be receiving treatments for that next week. Now, it's incredibly rare that Buckingham Palace will go into quite such detail about a member of the royal family's health condition. I've been told that the King was very keen to share his health news to try and encourage other men of a similar age who may well be experiencing similar symptoms to him to go and get themselves checked out by a medical professional. He has had to cancel a number of meetings and engagements planned for Dumfries House in Ayrshire today and tomorrow. This morning, he remains at Burke Hall, his private house on the Balmoral estate, with Her Majesty the Queen before going into hospital next week. But this time next week, we're going to have a situation where we've got the King and the future Queen in hospital at the same time.
OK, Cameron, thank you very much indeed. And our Cameron's going to keep us up to date with all the developments on that one. Now, Lincolnshire police have referred themselves to a watchdog after 2-year-old Bronson Battersby was found dead next to his father's body in Skegness.
Yes, the toddler starved to death after 60-year-old Ken suffered a heart attack. His mother claims that the boy was too small to reach a fridge that was full of food before he died. Well, according to reports, Lincolnshire police were contacted on 2 occasions before the bodies were discovered.
Well, the police force has said in a statement the exact actions of organisations involved will be analysed in a forthcoming review, and at this stage it would be inappropriate to comment further.
Well, we're now joined by GB News East Midlands reporter Will Hollis. And Will, this is just the most heart-wrenching story.
Yes, it's been described by the Director of Children's Services at Lincolnshire County Council as a tragic incident. Bronson Battersby was known to Children's Services here in the East Midlands. He lived alone with his father, Ken, who's 60 years old, in Skegness, and social workers were expecting to do a routine visit, something that they would do every month or so with a child like Bronson. But upon 2 occasions when they tried to conduct that routine welfare visit in early January, and on both occasions when there was no answer, they did try to communicate with police. It was only after a 3rd visit, when a landlady let the social worker inside of the home in Skegness, that the bodies of not only Kenneth, who is believed to have died of a heart attack, but also 2-year-old Bronson were found. Now, because of the nature of this, Lincolnshire County Council's Children's Services Department has ordered a rapid review. That's something that's expected to take about 2 weeks to conduct. So that review we will find out the findings from in early February. But Lincolnshire Police have said in a statement that investigations have been carried out and the deaths are not being treated as suspicious. However, it has referred itself to the IOPC, that's the Independent Office for Police Conduct, a police watchdog which investigates any police involvement that could have led to the death of somebody that was deemed to be preventable. Now, we've heard from the IPC watchdog who've said that they are assessing to determine what action is required. We've also been hearing from the boy's mother, a lady called Sarah, who spoke to the Sun newspaper, who said in quite a scathing response to her views on the social services, if social services had done their job, Bronson would still be alive. They can't let them get away with this. Now, while there are all of these public organisations that will be conducting various different reviews to see if their processes were up to scratch in handling a social case like 2-year-old Bronson, what we can now expect to see is the lens of society looking on what more could be done across the nature of British society right now that meant a 2-year-old boy like Bronson was left over Christmas to die beside his father.
OK, Will, for now, thank you. Unbelievable.
Just the most heartbreaking case, isn't it?
Now it is 14 minutes past 9. Coming up at past, Andrew and Bev will take us through their programme. Morning, you two.
Good morning to you.
What
How are you
got?
both?
Yeah, all right.
Good, how are you?
We're all right.
Warming up.
Oh, it's
freezing
cold.
out.
Jolly
there.
freezing out there this morning. -3 in my car. It's
but
just
I
coming
think
in.
if you're in Scotland, it's probably about -23.
Yeah, this is true.
They think we're wimps.
Yeah, we are.
And Stephen, you are
We
a bit
are.
of a wimp.
It was -6 at mine.
Was it?
This morning, yeah.
Right.
Which was
You win.
Yes,
which was a bit
absolutely.
not compared to Scotland though.
So we're going to try and warm everybody up a little bit this morning. We're going to be reflecting on this vote last night.
As expected, the rebellion melted away. I said to Arlene Foster yesterday, was here with me, and she said, "What's your prediction?" I said, 12 will vote against. It was 11. It was 11. But the Prime Minister's authority is damaged in the process. And of course, we'll be taking him later because he's doing a press conference. And of course, it comes as a poll puts the Tories down at 20%.
Well, he's going to try and show some unity, isn't he?
Tricky
After last night, yeah.
Afraid so.
And I don't think people vote for unity, do they, at a general election? I know this idea that a party has to be united and that the people don't get behind a party that is fractured, but I think right now people want to see what their bills are going to cost this winter in this cold weather for their gas and their electric. They want to see what their supermarket shop, how much it is to fill a tank of petrol in their car. All of that is at the forefront of people's minds, and I do think the last 24 hours, in a way, have shown actually how detached a lot of Westminster is.
Yeah, but on that point, what I always wonder about that is that they're really legitimate points and really legitimate questions. But does any party have any answers to it? Any of them?
No, it doesn't feel that way. You're right, Stephen, but that is what is frustrating. And when I say the detachment of Westminster, I don't just mean the Conservatives. I mean almost everybody you see sat in that chamber. You wonder who do you go home and talk to? Who do you go and speak to? Because you don't seem to be able to relate to what most normal people are going through.
Yeah, that's a valid point, actually.
Yeah. And of course, the royals. Who'd have thought it?
Yeah.
Princess Wales and the King.
What do you make of the King announcing what his condition is? Because I think...
Made me a bit icky.
Yeah,
I know we have to raise awareness.
We do have to raise awareness, because men are appallingly bad at getting their bits looked at. They really are.
Yeah.
We're very bad at it. I'm not personally, but men have got to check. And if somebody like the King in that exalted position, and if he'd gone into hospital, there'd have been huge speculation about what's wrong with him.
Yeah.
So deal with it. And let's not forget, there was great consternation about the way the palace behaved when the Queen, Her Majesty the Queen, went into hospital. They effectively denied she'd been in hospital, and she had been. So they're learning lessons from that.
It does inspire conversation. My children and I had a conversation about this around the dinner table last night because we had GB News Radio on, and of course I had to explain what the doctor would have done to check King Charles's prostate, and my daughter went, "Oh, that's a privilege."
Well, probably, unless he had a PSA. He might have had a PSA.
What does that mean?
That's a blood test.
He's been looking it out this morning.
But this is why, you know what, on that level, then this is why...
It is the right conversation.
And
we should be having it.
about it, aren't we? That's apparently what he wants.
Yeah, he's the most famous man in Europe, if not the world, and he's having the same procedure a lot of men have to have. So it's the right thing.
It's a modern royal family, isn't it?
The Princess of Wales, unusual, isn't it, for a woman of that age to be in hospital for 2 weeks, and we're not going to see her till after Easter. We're not going to speculate about what it is, because we don't know.
I found that story a little more concerning, actually. But we wish them both well, and we hope she particularly is sat at home or sat in the hospital now watching GB News with a bowl of cornflakes, and we wish you a very good morning and a nice hot cup of tea.
She doesn't eat cornflakes.
She might be. I'll tell you what, there's a picture on the front of the Mail this morning of her, which I really like, though it is... Where's 6? Oh, there you go. She looks older in it. I think it's an older... Whether the airbrush the other ones or what, but she looks... But she sort of looks... She looks her age.
I think
she looks her age. I mean, I hate to say it, but that's what women look like.
But I think that's a good thing.
I don't think
it's a really lovely picture of her. She looks...
She doesn't look 42, 40. She was 43 last week, I think, wasn't she? She looks pretty damn good.
I don't know. I like it because it's a bit more reality.
Yeah.
And she looks striking.
Yes, she is.
Striking
She's
woman.
going to age beautifully.
She's a beautiful woman. And if anything, it's just shown how much we all love her. So we wish you both well. I'm sure they're both watching GB News this morning.
I quite like getting... Well, because, I'm nearly as old as you, Bev, now.
We're almost exactly the same age,
almost
aren't we?
exactly the same age. And
what happened to you then, Stephen?
It's getting to that...
Where did it all go wrong, Stephen?
It's what?
Why did it all go wrong?
Stop it, he looks amazing.
I thought you were much older than Bev.
I had a very, very hard paper round, Andrew. not as hard as yours. You will see. Anyway, I'll see you two a little bit later on.
See you at 5:30. Now, do you spend lots of money in order to keep up with your friends?
No.
Apparently it's what we're doing. 15% of adults willing to spend over £500 to keep up with their friends' spending.
No, it's
Keeping up with the
crackers.
Joneses. Do you do it? Stay with us.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together. For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Who'd have thought it? We've now got pages and pages of emails about scones.
You never let us
Honestly.
down. We had 20 minutes and you did it.
Joe says it's scone as in own, not scone as in gone.
I told you it would be hard to read because it's spelled the same way, isn't it? I would say the opposite to you two, says Susie. We say scone.
Chaz says it doesn't matter, once you've eaten it, it's scone.
Very good. Leah says, how do you pronounce cone? There is your answer. Scone.
Eddie says scone as in stone. Martin says scone, fastest cake in the world. Oh, yeah. Oh, very good.
Yeah, very, very good. Richard says it rhymes with moan. And the world is spelt scone, not scone. I teach English. I would never say scone. Well, this all comes...
Susie Dent would disagree with you.
Susie Dent from Countdown. This is what it all stems from. She says the number one question in the studio is not what it's like to work with Jimmy Carr. It's how do you say scone or scone? And she says that according to the Cambridge Dictionary, the word scone is pronounced scone.
Right, so that's British.
There you go, that's us. But over in America, the baked good is spelt and said scone.
So if you want to be American,
You
say
say scone.
scone, and you can have your scone with your vitamins.
Vitamins. On
But
the
if you're
sidewalk.
if you're British, you're scone.
Yes, but she says she actually accepts both ways
She
on the
might,
show.
but she's trying to be diplomatic.
And the actual debate, she says, is whether it's jam or cream first. That should be the debate we're having, according to Susie Dent.
Well, obviously it's jam first. You can't
Obviously
put
it's
you
cream
can't- you-
first.
You don't actually think that?
Yes, because it's like butter, and you'd always spread butter on the bread before you do
Yeah, but how do you put
filling.
the jam on top of the cream without pulling all the cream
Just
off?
kind of, you know, swizzle it through it.
Swizzle it?
Swizzle. Wow, just
No
when I
jam.
thought we were
I thought
kindred
we had-
spirits.
No, you've ruined it there.
There you go. We don't even have time to ask you your opinion on that one.
No.
Next time, next week.
Yeah, thanks for getting in touch this morning. It's been good to hear from you, and we'll see you tomorrow morning.
Britain's
at
Newsroom.
6.
Up next.
Oh, yes, it is.
Yeah, got to tell them that.
Good morning, Alex Burkill here with your latest GB News weather forecast. It's going to be a cold day again with a harsh frost for many of us this morning, but watch out for some hefty snow showers, particularly across northern parts. For northern Scotland, we have an amber snow warning in force because following on from some heavy snow showers already this week, we could see a further 15 to 20 centimetres of snow building up in some places. Some disruption is quite likely. Also some wintry showers affecting parts of Northern Ireland and down western and eastern coastal parts of England and Wales too. Further inland though, lots of dry and sunny weather, but still feeling cold. Temperatures only rising a few degrees above freezing for many, and some parts of Scotland staying below freezing. Through this evening and overnight, we will see more showers for a time, continuing to feed down on a brisk northerly wind before some more outbreaks of more persistent snow push their way in across parts of Scotland through the early hours. Further south, it's a generally dry picture with lots of clear skies, so again, temperatures are going to drop. Many places falling several degrees below freezing, so a frosty or possibly even icy start for some of us tomorrow morning. On Friday, a bit of a north-south split across northern parts, particularly Scotland.